יאללה, סבבה. Can you hear me with this? I guess so. Okay, let's get to it. Sababa. Hey, good morning. We're gonna read some Mearsheimer for my schoolwork. So the question was, in the last year, a lot has been said about U.S. and Israel relations, and about foreign policy, and about America's foreign policy. Choose 2 to 3. איך אומרים כתבות? Fuck. Items, journalistic items, and use them to explain 2 main theories and relevant essays, like papers, like for Mearsheimer and stuff like that. So I already did about like constructive theory, which is like America feels that it has an identity it needs to protect. And as Israel is becoming less democratic, following like the judicial reform that has gained a lot of American criticism, this might be pulling us apart. So, the second part of the question is, can regime changes in Israel affect the relations between the states, like U.S. and Israel? 1 minute. Fargo? סבבה? כן. ראית אם יש לך layers, כן, חבויים של adjustment? אז זה בטח בנול אם זה movement. תראה מה קשור לנול הזה. מי יושב עליו. אוקיי, סבבה, אז תנסה לראות, לפתח מה שקורה בתוך הנול אובייקט. אוקיי. אוקיי, וניסית לעשות לו disable? כאילו, יש שם איזה אפקטים או משהו של movement? כן. נראה. Okay, so we're gonna try do some schoolwork, but I need to help this dude with After Effects. יפה.
אז יש לי, כאילו נגיד, זה אמור, כאילו זה הסטנה,
כן.
את השייק שיש פה?
לא, תנסה שהמצלמה לא תזוז טוב, לא תזוז חזק. מה, שהוא ממשיך כאילו ללכת אחורה, ממשיך להיות בזום אאוט.
זה יותר כזה, זה ממש כזה ממשיך סתם לזוז אקראית. כאילו רואים את זה נגיד פה יותר, יש את זה על כל אחד, כאילו תראי פה נגיד שזה רק תמונה.
תניח את הטלפון על משהו, זה ממש רועד. כאילו ככה פשוט תפנה למעלה, כן, שאני נוכל להבין את התזוזה שם. טוב, קיצור, מה עוד יש לך שם? יש לך עוד נול מוחבא אולי למטה? כי הנול לא חייב להיות למעלה. הסתכלת? כי יש בדברים האלה בדרך כלל מיליון ליירס.
אז זה מה שיש לי פה, אין לי כאן עוד...
אוקיי, ובפרנטים אתה רואה משהו קשור לעוד משהו חוץ מהנול?
לא, רק הנול, הקאמרה קשור לנול.
הקאמרה קשור לנול. תסתכל אולי על הקאמרה יש משהו?
אז על הקאמרה, אם אני פותח אותו, יש...
טרנזישן וקאמרה אופשנס. טרנספורם וקאמרה אופשנס. ואוקיי, אז אין שום דבר בפוזישנס שם. וברוטיישן.
בקאמרה אופשנס.
אוקיי, מה זה הדבר שפתוח שם על אחד? בקאמרה אופשנס? אספקט ריישיו, סבבה. אוקיי. אז זה חייב להיות בנול איפשהו, זה חייב להיות משהו בנול. בפוזישן יש אקספרשן. זה אומר שבפוזישן יש אקספרשן, אתה רואה שזה אדום?
כן, איך מבטלים אקספרשן זה?
תלחץ על החץ למטה שיש לו, ליד הסטופ וואץ'. שמאלה, אוקיי, אחלה. כן, אחלה. עכשיו שם באקספרשנס, אתה יכול ללחוץ על הסטופ וואץ'. תלחץ אלט ותלחץ על הסטופ וואץ'.
אוקיי. אלט של הפוזישן?
כן, על איפה שיש אקספרשן.
כן, הנה, ואז יש טרנספורם.
ואז מה כתוב לך?
טרנספורם פוזישן.
אוקיי, טוב, תמחק את זה. זה דווקא בסדר, אבל בוא נראה אם עכשיו הוא פשוט מעלים לך את הסימון הזה, ועכשיו תראה אם זה עדיין קורה.
זהו, לא, נפטר.
אחלה, מדהים, יאללה ביי. Okay, so if you have something going on in After Effects and you don't know what's going on, you don't know why it's moving weird and it is red, the numbers are red, then you probably have an expression on that you didn't deal with. Yeah, that's the moral of the story of my phone call just now. Let's go back to schoolwork and I'm opening this thing. It's super relevant, you know. The Great Benefactor. It's called Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy. Yeah, you know. Yeah, I went to school not because I need a job. I went to school just because I didn't want to be old and be at school. So I do a lot of tech stuff. Although my setup is admittedly pretty trashy. I mean, I used to film at the studio when I did like more video essay-esque things, but now when I'm home and I have to study, it's like a lot of setup and work, making it high quality. So this is production level at home. Okay. The Great Benefactor. Now we're getting into we're getting into the realist theory. We're gonna read it, and when it's relevant, I'll copy it into my work. The Great Benefactor. Since the October War in 1973, Washington has provided Israel with a layer of dwarfing support. Yeah, I guess substance is more important. Since the October War in 1973, Washington has provided Israel with a level of support dwarfing the amount provided by any other state. It has been the largest annual recipient of direct U.S. economic and military assistance since 1976, and the largest total recipient since World War II. Total direct U.S. aid to Israel amounts to well over 140 billion in 2003 dollars. Israel receives about 3 billion in direct foreign assistance each year, which is roughly 1/5 of America's foreign aid budget. In per capita terms, the United States gives each Israeli a direct subsidy worth about $500 per year. This largest, okay, is especially striking when one realizes, מה מאמי? יש שם זה בלי שקית, תיקח. סלט וסנדוויץ' פבנש בלי שקית, תשים לך בשקית. Direct subsidy worth about $500 per year. This largest, I don't know what, is especially striking when one realizes that Israel is now a wealthy industrial state with a per capita income roughly equal to South Korea or Spain. Israel also gets other special deals from Washington. Other aid recipients get their money in quarterly installments, but Israel receives it entire appropriation, yeah, at the beginning of each year, of each fiscal year, and thus earns extra interest. Most recipients of American military, largesse is like a frivolous access or something. Yeah, okay. When I was in the army, like every like bet equipment, like the things that you wear that are not formal, everything was U.S. military. Madei bet, like bet uniform. Plus, of course, old F-16s that are usually used by non-combatants, like used in Tironut when you're in training, for people who are not going to be combatants. Other aid recipients get their fiscal year, thus earns extra interest. More recipients of American military assistance are required to spend all of it in the United States, but Israel can use roughly 25% of its aid allotment to subsidize its own defense industry. Israel is the only recipient that does not have to account for how the aid is spent. For example, that makes it virtually impossible to prevent the money from being used for support for purposes the U.S. states opposes, like building settlements in the West Bank. Very true. Also, the Israeli army guards some of the settlements. So, even if you're not like directly providing money for building settlements, you are providing money to help them maintain it. If you're giving army money. Moreover, the United States has provided Israel with nearly $3 billion to develop weapons systems like Lavi aircraft that the Pentagon did not want or need, while giving Israel access to top-drawer U.S. weaponry like Black Hawk helicopters and F-16 jets. Finally, the United States gives Israel access to intelligence that it denies its NATO allies and has turned a blind eye towards Israel's acquisition of nuclear weapons. I don't know how relevant that is because they are very aware, and I think they think we are like encompassed in their agreement to not use nuclear force. In addition, and I think that's a reasonable assumption to make. In addition, Washington provides Israel with consistent diplomatic support. Since 1982, the United States has voted 32 United Nations Security Council resolutions that were critical of Israel, a number greater than the combined total of vetoes cast by all other Security Council members. It also blocked Arab states' efforts to put Israel's nuclear arsenal on the International Atomic Energy Agency agenda. The United States also comes to Israel's rescue in wartime and takes its side when negotiating peace. The Nixon administration resupplied Israel during the October War. Resupplied Israel during the October War. We're talking about like 1973 war, and protected Israel from the threat of Soviet intervention. Washington was deeply involved in the negotiations that ended the war, that war, as well as the lengthy step-by-step process that followed, just as it played a key role in the negotiations that preceded and followed the 1993 Oslo Accords. There were occasional frictions between the U.S. and Israeli officials in both cases, but the United States coordinated its positions closely with Israel and consistently backed the Israeli support of the negotiations. The Israeli approach to the negotiations. Indeed, one American participant at Camp David 2000 later said, "Far too often we functioned as Israel's lawyer." As discussed below, this is like what he's like trying to substantiate here is Israel has a major interest in terms of realist theory. Like we have a lot to lose when it comes to money and when it comes to defense with our allyship with the U.S. As discussed below, Washington has given Israel wide latitude in dealing with the occupied territories, the West Bank and Gaza Strip, even when its actions were at odds with stated U.S. policy. Moreover, the Bush administration's ambitious strategy to transform the Middle East, beginning with the invasion of Iraq, is at least partly intended to improve Israel's strategic situation. Apart from wartime alliances, it is hard to think of another instance where one country has provided another with similar level of material and diplomatic support for such an extended period. America's support for Israel is, in short, unique. Okay, why me? Since you're here, is this like audio better or worse than before? This extraordinary generosity might be understandable if Israel were a vital strategic asset, or if there were a compelling moral case for sustained U.S. backing. But neither rationale is convincing. Wait, let's read that again. The extraordinary generosity might be understandable if Israel were a vital strategic asset, or if there were a compelling moral case for sustained U.S. backing. So, in the constructivist theory. Thanks. Good. Okay. So headphones are better. So, in the constructivist theory, the moral case would be that we are both democratic countries, supposedly, and not supposedly. Israel is a democratic country. It has its flaws, of course, and it is in a decline, sure. So this is like the moral case for U.S. backing. And the strategic asset, I think it has mostly to do with like a worldwide web of support, because Russia and Iran are supporting some of our neighbors, and us being basically owned by the U.S. in that terms, like in the sense that we're in allyship with them, so we cannot be in allyship.
You come kitchen clean. That woman
So, in that sense, I think ignoring that is ignoring like a strategic asset that Israel is for the United States, but it might be not worth it, in the large scale of things. But neither rationale is convincing. Again, this is like Mearsheimer. He's an academic. He's not an army person, so he might not know a lot of the things that people in U.S. government know. A strategic liability. According to the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee (AIPAC) website, the United States and Israel have formed a unique partnership to meet the growing strategic threats in the Middle East. This cooperative effort provides significant benefits to both the United States and Israel. This claim is an article of faith among Israel's supporters and is routinely invoked by Israeli politicians and pro-Israel Americans. So this basically says that there are significant benefits. It doesn't say, okay. To meet the strategic threats in the Middle East. So the strategic threats are more materially dangerous for Israel, of course. But I guess America, in its aim to support democracy across the world, it does have like a reasoning to support us here. Israel may have been a strategic asset during the Cold War by serving as America's proxy after the Six-Day War, 1967. Israel helped contain Soviet expansion in the region and inflicted humiliating defeats on Soviet clients like Egypt and Syria. Israel occasionally helped protect other U.S. allies like Jordan's King Hussein, and its military military prowess forced Moscow to spend more backing its losing and its military prowess forced Moscow to spend more backing its losing clients. Okay. Israel also gave the United States useful intelligence about Soviet capabilities. That's okay. That's also an important point. Like intelligence about the region. Israel intelligence is considered to be like amazing. Of course, now that we had like October 7th, that might be less blatant, like up for debate. Sorry. Okay, cool. ביי חיים שלי. תודה יפה שלי. כל יום הוא צועק עליי. ביי חיים שלי יפה. Wait, this is Morgenthau. Where is this? Cool. Okay, so intelligence might be a point of realist interest of the United States in Israel. I think Israel, just by geographic and the ability, I mean, we look like Arabs, yeah? We don't look different. So the fact that we live so closely and it's very easy to impersonate, we have like units in the army that this is what they do. They impersonate Arab people and they infiltrate all sorts of groups, terror groups or different organizations. And that is a lot more easy for someone, called Yoel Cohen to, go do something like that than some kind of a Daniel Johnson with like blue hair, blue eyes, and blonde hair. So if I'm trying to like weigh the different parts of what might be a realist explanation for America's change in its relations with Israel following the latest year with the decline in democracy, it still has the interest in Israeli intelligence, and Israel, of course, has a huge interest in maintaining their army using American money. Israel's strategic value during this period should not be overstated. However, sorry, I'm going to bring myself some water. Israel's strategic value during this period should not be overstated. However, backing Israel was not cheap. So, okay, so they're saying that it is really important in a strategic sense to back Israel, but it was not cheap, yeah. And it complicated America's relations with the Arab world. For example, the U.S. decision to give Israel 2.2 billion in emergency military aid during the October War, again October 1973 war, was triggered. Were triggered an OPEC oil embargo uh, that inflicted considerable damage on Western economies. Okay, so like they fought with like the מדינות המפרץ, like oh fuck, what's it called in English? Like Saudi Arabia and all sorts of Arab countries who have a lot of oil. Moreover, Israel's military could not protect U.S. interests in the region. For example, the United States could not rely on Israel when the Iranian Revolution in 1979 raised concern about the security of Persian Gulf. The Gulf states. Sorry, raised concerns about the security of Persian Gulf oil supplies and had to create its own rapid deployment force instead. Even if Israel was a strategic asset during the Cold War, the First Gulf War, 1990 to 1991, revealed that Israel was becoming מלחמת המפרץ in Hebrew, was becoming a strategic burden. The United States could not use Israeli bases during the war without rupturing the anti-Iraq coalition, and it had to divert resources to keep Tel Aviv from doing anything that might fracture the alliance against Saddam. Saddam Hussein. Okay. History repeated itself in 2003. Although Israel was eager for the United States to attack Saddam, President Bush could not ask it to help without triggering Arab opposition. So Israel stayed on the sidelines again. Beginning in the 1990s, and especially after 9/11, U.S. support for Israel has been justified by the claim that both states are threatened by terrorist groups originating in the Arab or Muslim world, and by a set of rogue states that back these groups and seek WMD. Don't know what this means. This rationale implies that Washington would give Israel a free hand in dealing with the Palestinians and not press Israel to make concessions until all Palestinian terrorists are imprisoned or dead, which is not a realistic thing to say or do, because if you occupy a people and if you put them in jail all the time and cool, weapons of mass destruction, cool. So okay. Yeah, so it's not reasonable to think that you could. Yeah, thank you so much. It's not reasonable to think that you could imprison or kill all the Palestinian terrorists, because by killing someone's parents or humiliating someone's parents at a crossing where some kind of power sick soldier, rogue soldier, makes some humiliate someone, then of course his son is going to grow up to be a person that wants to take back his pride, wants to take back the place that he lives in. He's telling himself, I live here, I deserve to have a way to go through my life and not be humiliated all the time. And thus he will rise up against the Israelis. And it is important to say that it's a tricky thing to say, and it might sound like a demented lefty thing to say, but terrorism is eventually determined by history and by those who tell history. Some of the largest places in Tel Aviv are called named after people who were considered terrorists when there was the British mandate here. Like, they blew up hotels, they blew up meetings of diplomats. It's not like a very outlandish thing to say that you cannot way to kill and imprison all terrorists, because it's not going to happen in the people that you are still occupying. It also implies that the United States should go after countries like the Islamic Republic of Iran, Saddam Hussein's Iraq, and Bashar al-Assad's Syria. Israel is thus seen as a crucial ally in the war on terror, because its enemies are America's enemies. This new rationale becomes persuasive, but Israel is in fact a liability in the war on terror and the broader effort to deal with rogue states. So, okay, so this is a shared interest, which in realist theory of international relations would be a good reason to have an agreement, to have a mutual uh, um, security agreement. But like as like Mearsheimer explained before, when they could maybe use Israel, it wasn't significant enough and was not ordered to get into the fighting. I'm sure I'm sure that even though that was what he's saying, I'm sure there are like background intelligence things that Israel has helped with when dealing with Iran, and I think it is easier to infiltrate the intelligence of people that you are more like. That we're closer in a lot of ways to Iranian people and Arab people than we are to American people. So there are reasons that we should be able to get better intelligence. Um, to begin with, terrorism is a tactic employed by a wide array of political groups. It is not a single unified adversary. The terrorist organizations that threaten Israel, Hamas and Hezbollah, do not threaten the United States, except when it intervenes against them, as in Lebanon in 1982. Moreover, Palestinian terrorism is not random violence directed against Israel or the West. It is largely a response to Israel's prolonged campaign to colonize the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. I wouldn't call it colonize after a certain point, because there were advances trying to give more autonomy that were rejected a lot of times. I think the latest rejection of a plan that seemed legitimate was at 2008 by Ehud Olmert. He gave like something that was based on 67 borders, and he was very willing to sit down and talk. But I think Saddam Hussein, Abu Mazen, he was not. I know like people call him Saddam Hussein. People call him sorry, not Saddam Hussein, Mahmoud Abbas. His name is Mahmoud Abbas. But in a lot of Arab cultures, when you have a son, you're called after your son. So Abu Mazen means his child is Mazen. So I think it's reasonable to respect that. So Abu Mazen was not willing to sit down and talk about these things seriously. So nothing ever came of it. Um, it did feel huge. I was 13, I think, at the time, and I understood this was a big thing. This might be like a path to a better place, and it didn't go anywhere. Of course, it's not like only one side's issue. It's not only one side. Not only one side is to blame in this failing of the agreement, but it does have a lot to do with the Palestinian leadership and what they thought they could gain by not entering this agreement. Okay. I'm gonna write. So I've written about the constructive thing, and you know what? I'll put like a song. There's a really, really cute song about Gaza, basically. It's in Hebrew, but it's really good. So, I'll put it, I'll write for a minute, and I'll be right back. And, still on screen. Great. These headphones are really not half bad for how cheap they were. Just like bought them on the way to a bus sometime. Okay. Okay.
אמא של סבא גרה בעזה, יש כבר מיקום מדויק וציטוט, בונקר נוירוטי, 8 מסכי פלזמה, אמא של סבא הולכת למות. אמא שלנו עובדת בתנובה, יש לה באוטו ביצים וחלב, אין לה מפה, רק טכנולוגיה, מישהו משקר את עיני הנהר. אש כמו פעם קצר, מי מבדיל בינינו, בין שמחה למהומה, או חצי כוח לא נפסיק לרקוד את זה עד שרק אחד על הבמה. כנס סטודנטים או פלואסצנטי, מסלול תצוגת אופנה מחשבתית, דוקטור מצפון וגברת אותנטית, לכו חפשו עבודה אמיתית. אסור שידעו כמה ידענו, איך התאמצנו כל כך להחטיא, בלי מטרה, רק מבחן כוח, המשכנו ישר בצומת הדין. אש כמו פעם קצר, מי מבדיל בינינו, בין שמחה למהומה, או חצי כוח לא נפסיק לרקוד את זה עד שרק אחד על הבמה, על הבמה.
Okay. So next time I'll play a Palestinian song. Where are you guys? Cool. Yeah. That is my partner. You do recognize him if you saw like the stream for 2 days ago. He's a musician, not like a super known one, but he works as a producer, musical producer, and he's pretty good at that. He did like Gabriel Balachsan, if you know him, like pretty talented people worked here. I've sang in some of the things that he's produced. You know what? I'll put like a Palestinian song now. It's really good. It's like it's a cute song, like about how your mother is always like asking you when are you gonna get married. Emtan Jauzak, I think it's called. Let's hear it like this. Yeah. Yeah, this is an awesome music video and a great song. Here you can do it like this.
انت نجوزك يما انت نتركز يما انت نجوزك يما والبنك يتصلي امتى نتيجي انت دوري انا اوكي كله مظبط كله مسوقي دوري انا اوكي بلا قلبك انت ومتخوزك
7 الارمات ديك بدق على الباب وانا تحت الحاب سمع على البلكون جيرتي دبري عريس احصائيات اغلب الازواج بتنامش على نفس الفراش امي على الايفون سيري ظبطي عريس قول له لابن الحلال يستنى لان العالم عم تستناني بلاقي شريكي بعد ما الاقي حالي حاليا صحت العزوبيه صباح الظهريه المرخيه
انت نجوزك يما انت نتركز يما انت نجوزك يما والبنك يتصلي امتى نتيجي عنا دوري انا اوكي كله مظبط كله مسوقي دوري انا اوكي بلا قلبك انت ومتخوزك ولي ويلي وين انت وين وانا وين ولا دع ولا دين جيبوا مخدة جيبوا سرير لا بنام لا بفير انا بصحي الدين مينوس مش دين في حساب بنكي في كم بطريق ولا ليرة ولا بيتكم انت نجوزك يما انت نتركز يما انت نجوزك يما والبنك يتصلي امتى نتيجي عنا دوري انا اوكي كله مظبط كله مسوقي دوري انا اوكي بلا قلبك انت ومتخوزك بلا ضغط بلا كبت بلا غصب بلا ضغط بلا كبت بلا غصب حيو قراري حيو حيو حبيبتي حيو حيو حريتي حيو 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 انت نجوزك يما ولا ليرة انت نتركز يما ولا بيتكم انت نجوزك يما والبنك يتصلي امتى نتيجي عنا والبنك يتصلي امتى نتيجي عنا
Cool. So we're back in Mearsheimer. Yeah, I mean, I don't publish a lot of music. I did once when I filmed like a live show for my phone, I guess. Okay, let's get back to Mearsheimer. Fun. L Rob. We were here. Share terrorist threats, capital relationship backwards. Okay. We got here, I think. Its enemies are America's enemies. This scenario seems to be persuasive, but Israel is in fact a liability in the war on terror and the broader effort to deal with rogue states. Okay. To begin with, terrorism is a tactic employed by a wide array of political groups. It is not a single unified adversary. The terrorist organizations that threaten Israel. Okay, we read that as well. Do not threaten, blah, 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 blah. Moreover, Palestinian terrorism is not random violence, in response to prolonged campaign to colonize West Bank and Gaza Strip. As I said, I think it's a stretch calling it a campaign to colonize. This whole area is a post-colonial place. But I mean, if you like the music, I'll the next time I need to sit down and like write something more coherently, like I'll put something more that's local, like from Beersheba or Israel or Palestinian people or whatever. More importantly, saying that Israel and the United States are united by a shared terrorist threat has the causal relationship backwards. Rather, the United States has a terrorism problem in a good part because it is closely allied with Israel, not the other way around. U.S. support for Israel is not the only source of anti-American terrorism, but it is an important one, and it makes winning the war on terror more difficult. There is no question, for example, that many Al-Qaeda leaders, including bin Laden, are motivated by Israel's presence in Jerusalem and the plight of the Palestinians. According to the U.S. 9/11 Commission, bin Laden explicitly sought to punish the United States for its policies in the Middle East, including its support for Israel, and he even tried to time the attacks to highlight this issue. Equally important, unconditional U.S. support for Israel makes it easier for extremists like bin Laden to rally popular support and to attract recruits. That is so true. I mean, there's no doubt that U.S. support rises the backlash from within Arab countries, because I mean, Western culture and Western media is everywhere. I think if they wouldn't have supported Israel, then America probably would have less backlash, less התנגדות, less antagonism, let's say. Okay. I say either supports. Public opinion polls confirm that Arab populations are deeply hostile to American support to Israel, and that the U.S. State Department's advisory group on public democracy for the Arab and Muslim world found that citizens in these countries are genuinely distressed at the plight of the Palestinians and at the role they perceive the United States to be playing. As for so-called rogue states in the Middle East, they are not a dire threat to vital U.S. interests, apart from the U.S. What? As for so-called rogue states in the Middle East, they are not a dire threat to vital U.S. interests, apart from the U.S. commitment to Israel itself. Okay, sababa. So, the people who hate America around here are not really threatening America. They're threatening Israel, which encompasses U.S. involvement when this happens, and we are in agreement with them. Although the United States does have a number of disagreements with these regimes, Washington would not be nearly as worried about Iran, Ba'athist, Iraq, or Syria if it is not so closely tied to Israel. Even if these states acquire nuclear weapons, which is obviously not desirable, it would not be a strategic disaster for the United States. Neither America nor Israel could be blackmailed by a nuclear-armed rogue, because the blackmailer could not carry out the threat without receiving an overwhelming retaliation. The danger of a nuclear handoff of terrorists is equally remote, because a rogue state could not be sure the transfer would be undetected, or that it would be blamed and would not be blamed and punished afterwards. Furthermore, the U.S. relationship with Israel actually makes it harder to deal with these states. Israel's nuclear arsenal is one reason why some of its neighbors want nuclear weapons, and threatening these states with regime change merely increases that desire. Okay, this is very relevant. Furthermore, makes it harder to deal with. Israel's nuclear arsenal is one reason why some of its neighbors want nuclear weapons, and threatening these states with regime change, like within Israel, I didn't increase that desire. Okay, I'm not. Do they mean like a right-leaning government like we have now, which is changing the regime, or what do they mean? Okay, let's go on. Yet Israel is not much of an asset when the United States contemplated using forces against these regimes because it cannot participate in the fight. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So that's the same thing that they said before, that when the United States does have conflicts in this region, then the force that they give Israel, contemplates using force against the regime, but it cannot be for. Okay. So we cannot actually do anything to help them too much. In short, treating Israel as America's most important ally in the campaign against terrorism is and assorted Middle East dictatorships both exaggerates Israel's ability to help on these issues and ignores the way that Israel policies make U.S. efforts more difficult. I'm gonna plug in my computer real quick. You know what? Let's put another song in the meantime. Let's go for. What kind of music do you like? I mean, it's only you and me, so fuck it. Let's try. Let's put a new song. It's like about the war, how everyone's like super afraid. And it has amazing production. It sounds great. Everything except opera.
Yeah. 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 טמפרטורה הזיה, השמש עושה לה טוב, אמא שלה, ממרוקו, אבא מצפון הים, אפשר להרגיש את הקור, אמא שלה, איך יצא לו טוב, פחד אלוהים לשמור, התוירה אבוי, שילוב מסוכן, את נעלה איסטר בוי, ונרקוד עד אור הבוקר, עד שילוב מסוכן, יופי לא מפה, אבל לאט מלחיצה, את עושה לי חום, את מפחידה, כל הגוף צמרמורות, את עושה לי ים ברדק, פחד אלוהים ישמור. טמפרטורה הזיה, השמש ירדה לזכות, אמא שלך, ממש כמוך, ואבא שלך העיניים, צבע כחול עמוק, מצפון הים, ממש רחוק, פחד אלוהים ישמור, את אויבה אבוי, שילוב מסוכן, את נעלה איסטר בוי, ונרקוד עד אור הבוקר, עד שילוב מסוכן, יופי לא מפה, אבל לאט מלחיצה, את עושה לי חום, את מפחידה, כל הגוף צמרמורות, את עושה לי ים ברדק, פחד אלוהים ישמור. מזג חם אבל, מבט כמו מסיביר, לוק של מונדיאל, שיער זהב בעיר, ממש למהכפר, אבא שלה מהעיר, יש לה לוק מיוחד, והוא ממש מפחיד. עד שילוב מסוכן, יופי שלך לא מפה, אבל את מלחיצה, את עושה לי חום, את מפחידה, כל הגוף צמרמורות, את עושה לי ים ברדק, את פחד אלוהים ישמור. עד שילוב מסוכן, יופי לא מפה, אבל את מלחיצה, את עושה לי חום, את מפחידה, כל הגוף צמרמורות. היה כיף, היה סבבה. זהו.
יאללה, מושלם, יופי, אני ממש שמחה. כאילו גם, אתה יודע, לעשות בריף, זה גם להגיד מה אתה צריך מהם. ולתאם ציפיות, כאילו, שהם יבינו כשמשהו מבאס אותך, ושאתה תבין כשמשהו מבאס אותם, ברור, זה ממש ממש עוזר. יופי, יופי, יופי. זה שהתחלת וזה שהיה רגוע, זה כבר אני... זה כבר, זה שאמרת שהיה רגוע, למרות שאמרו שהיה ממש טוב, זה בדרך כלל זה ממש היה מפוצץ, זה ממש סימן טוב. Cool. Let's go back to Mearsheimer. Fucking dude. Cool. Cool. La la la, blah blah blah. Yeah, okay, so there's not much of an asset when the United States contemplates using force against these regimes because it cannot participate in the fight. Let's just like mark this. Can I mark it here? No? No. Okay, never mind. It's on page 6. In short, treating Israel as America's most important ally in the campaign against terrorism and distorted Middle East dictatorships both exaggerate. Sorry, 1 minute.
כן, זה בדיוק מה שהיה, מכאן בריף, כאילו, כזה כמה נקודות שתכף כאילו עלו לנו בשיחה. זה עבד, זה גם עבד.
יופי. More tech stuff. In short, treating Israel as America's blah, 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 I read that. Both exaggerates Israel's ability to help on these issues and ignores the way that Israel's policies makes U.S. efforts more difficult. Okay. Unquestioned support for Israel also weakens the U.S. positions outside the Middle East. Foreign elites consistently view the United States as too supportive of Israel, and think its tolerance of Israeli repression in the occupied territories is morally obtuse and a handicap in the war on terrorism. Based. And I mean, on one hand, it's based. On the other hand, it's very complicated to get to a point that you can deal with this conflict. I think the U.S. backing has helped a lot of people in Israel not die, which I am grateful for. But because of the antagonism it might create, then it might be pulling us further apart from like a true conversation with each other, because they are not showing like until now when they are showing like some kind of pushback against what Bibi's trying to do, against all sorts of military actions that might not be approved or might be not responsible enough. Up to this point, I don't think we had enough criticism that would help Palestinian people trust that the Americans also want their benefit. They also want them to see them free. Of course, like there are some U.S. resolutions that did pass, and that America did not veto. But I think that when Palestinians and Palestinian leaderships see the American support, and they don't see like things like what Biden has recently said, they think America is just trying to diminish everything Arab, which is not a wild thought considering America's history with Muslims. Uh, In April 2004, for example, 52 former British diplomats sent Prime Minister Tony Blair a letter saying that the Israel-Palestine conflict had poisoned relations between the West and the Arab and Islamic world, and warning that the policies of Bush and Prime Minister Ariel Sharon were one-sided and illegal. Sharon is like certainly. Sharon is a very complex figure. I mean, you could call him a terrorist in some of his decisions throughout his life, on the one hand. But on the second hand, he was the one that took with force every Israeli Jewish person out of Gaza at, I think it was 2007, I think, something like that. And he literally threatened like everyone who could vote, who voted against getting out of Gaza, would be fired. That's like a thing that he said. I mean, the structure of Israeli democracy is not strong enough for people to not do things like that. And he did do that, and we did get to a point where the country was torn. People were like, they call it the ההתנתקות, like the detachment. So Sharon also did things that you could call terrorists, but terrorist-esque, whatever. But he did do things that he thought would be beneficial to making a better future here. And I don't know, there's a thing called Pusa de Noura, which is a type of like Jewish witchcraft, basically. It's bullshit, yeah? But it's like a thing, and it's politically meaningful because a lot of rabbis like came together and they did Pulsa de Noura. Pulsa de Noura is basically asking God to kill a person that's going to do something that's bad for the Jews. They did Pulsa de Noura on Rabin before he was assassinated, and they did Pulsa de Noura on Sharon when he said that he was going to go through with a detachment from Gaza Strip. Okay, let's go back to Mearsheimer. Fun and games. Cool. One-sided and illegal. Yeah, okay. Okay. So maybe I'll stop like 1 minute more about this, about Sharon and the ההתנתקות. The problem with how he did it, there's a lot of courage in saying, I'm gonna go and do this really, really controversial thing. I'm gonna take everyone. There are like photos of soldiers picking people up and just throwing them in buses, trying, of course, not to hurt them. It looked better than some of the demonstrations we now see and how cops are treating demonstrators. But it was pretty brutal. People like dragging themselves on the floor, resisting eviction, all of that. It was not pretty, but it was an important thing to do if you wanted to proceed in a meaningful way towards a dialogue. But the problem is, at this point, Hamas was doing terrorist attacks for, I think it was like 3 or 4 years by that time, that they were like they were having like big terrorist attacks on population there, and we had to put a lot of army there to keep the people safe. This is the main reason Sharon and a lot of non-religious, a lot of secular people in Israel were pro the detachment, because they said we're sending our kids to die for people who care more about land than about human life, which is the case with fascists also. Always. So the problem was he did not do that. He did not consult the PA. He did not get into political engagement with the Palestinian diplomats at the time. And what happened is, the moment that they got out, Hamas was celebrating and claiming it was a result of their terrorism. Now, of course, every choice and these type of systems is very complex, and it has like a million reasons. And of course, soldiers dying on a daily basis was a very, very big reason, a very based reason to take people out of there so we can take our army out of there. Yeah, okay, so that's important, and it's good that we took them out. But the fact that he did not negotiate anything, he did not give Fatah like a real chance in hi in getting inside uh, the administration in Gaza, made it so Hamas became like the winner. The Israelis got out, and Hamas was celebrating the Israelis getting out, and they said this was a result of terrorism, this was a result of violent attacks, and not a result of common sense combined with those attacks. Which I think, even if you are saying our terrorism, or let's not call it terrorism in their eyes, because I think they thought about it as promoting their end goal of governing their own people. uh, it's really complicated, because on the one hand, I think it's a reasonable thing to think and do and get in there, but it's also an arm of the Muslim Brothers, which is the Islamic Republic. It's not simple. It's very, very complicated how this organization came to life and came to be what it is today. So I do support like what Sharon did in that time, because I think it was based in logic, but I think how he did it was detrimental to the point that we are now, with having Hamas brutalizing Gaza and Gazans. The Gaza Strip is not like a peaceful, secular, democratic place. It's a place that they have crossings like we have for people coming from the West Bank into Israel to work, for instance. That you have crossings, and you have to stop and make sure they have nothing in your car and stuff like that. So they have these inside of Gaza by Hamas, like not of Israeli soldiers. It's Hamasnikim, Hamas people standing in crossings, and it says all sorts of signs next to it saying, sister, cover your hair, brother, did you pray today? Like a lot of pressure to be religious in a Muslim Brotherhood fashion. Okay, okay. That was like a tiny little bit about Ariel Sharon and Gaza. Let's go forward. 1 minute, sorry. Okay, I'll put something that you can hear in the meantime. Dina? קצת, מה צריך? כן. יום חמישי, יאללה, כן. כן, כן, סבבה. סבבה. יאללה, ביי. What's going on? Okay. Let's I don't want to give it too many views, but it's interesting. Did you hear about Khalid Abu? Letting Hamas take the credit for Israel leaving Gaza was a mistake. Yeah, of course. Withdrawal should have been more planned. It should have been in coordination with the PA. It should have been in coordination with larger forces, like international forces. If they had any connection with Iran at this point, and we should have put our finger on it. We should have tried to, choose who we speak to and who we promote more meticulously, and not do the fucked up thing that Bibi has done for years now, and separate the people, letting them feel like they're getting the worst end of the stick at every point. One of the Palestinian peace activist that I've met in the last year. She said that now what's happening is, I met her after October 7th. So she said the people in Gaza are feeling like the people in the West Bank have it better, and the PA has larger numbers there. And the people in the West Bank are so furious at the PA for cooperating with Israel that they feel like the Gazan people have it better. So it's very, very weird. And because there are more people, I mean, overall, it seems like there is more Hamas support, but it's really fluctuating between the people who are, eating shit from each one of those organizations. Let's do. I want to put like, these are dudes that are in the States a lot. You might know them. I mean, you probably don't, but yeah. Met in Israel? What do you mean? Yeah, a lot of it feels like grass is greener. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. I mean, it's just.
Hey, I'm Andy, and welcome to Rock.
Oh, Andy, I don't want to know you. Yeah, the grass is greener on the other side is totally like the definition for that. Boiling point is nice. Cool.
Surprised, I'm so surprised. I love my TV, but it's still a lies. I don't know what it got for me. If I don't get lucky, then it's out the beer. But the road we beat above, I'm not gonna sign and you're just dumb. I forgot what can I say, but I know I'm due to my empty bed. And yeah, I don't care, I don't care. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, I don't care, I don't care. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yeah, I don't care, I don't care. Smart again, cause I know I'm blinging suddenly in. You see that it's right beside, and I get no pussy and I play guitar. See through the loneliness, cause you never me never do my best. I try and fix it up, cause I think I drove too far to stop. Yeah, okay, okay, ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah, okay, okay, ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah, okay, okay, ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah, okay, down. Sorry if I disappoint, I'm back to.
Hey, what happened? Why is my int ad? Okay. Oh, fuck that. Okay. Met the Palestinian activists in Israel. Yes, there's something called the Geneva Initiative. It's like the plan that was most popular. It is a result of a cooperation between Yossi Berin and Yasser. I can't remember his name, like the Arab journalist. He was part of the PA also, Palestinian diplomat, and they generated a plan that had relatively like a large acceptance, but of course it didn't happen because both of our leaderships suck in a lot of ways. But I joined the initiative. They have like program for women, like in the sense that there are theories like feminist theories and international relations theories that address the fact that there has never been a majority of women in leading countries and leading wars. So there are theories that claim it would be different because women appreciate childbirth more, they appreciate life more, they statistically they statistically strive to get more peace than justice, as opposed to men, which when sukrim otam, like when you ask them, a lot of men say that justice is more important than peace, and a lot of women say that peace and quiet is more important than justice. So I think that is one of the things that if we could. The third question in my in the paper that I have to write is about that. So we'll get there, I guess, like tomorrow. So yeah, I met that Palestinian activist in Israel. She actually had a chance to vote in the voting that Mahmoud Abbas, that Abu Mazen won. She was like excited about it. She's from East Jerusalem, and it's a very complicated situation. Of course, she was. The main thing that she said was that we don't accept each other's narratives. That's super based. I'm drowning in schoolwork, but basically I was trying to make a video about how our education systems are turning us against each other. Like in Israel, in Israeli classrooms, you don't see any. A lot of the times, you just see like the borderlines of Israel. You don't see anywhere called Palestine. You don't see anywhere called the occupied territories, which you do see when you look for like serious maps online. Like you can see places that have like the purple line, which is the 67 line that we crossed. You can see all sorts of different lines, but in your classroom, you basically just see this, trapeze thing. And in Palestinian schools, a lot of the times they have images of soldiers being the bad dude. They have teachers praising kids that were from their schools that died by suicide, that were shaheeds. It's very, very disheartening. I've listened to a lot of Haviv Ratig Gu talking about that. Not sure your opinions about him. Actually, I don't know him. Where does he write? What does he do? Anyway, in the school systems, there's a lot of place, of course, for children to understand things about life and about the people around them. And you can have all the programs against racism you want, but we are separated in schools. Not all. I mean, there's like one duolingual school in Beersheba where I live, and there are a lot of duolingual schools, but it's not like the default. And it's sad because, again, we're not that different. Our languages have a lot of intersections, and it's not like we're so different that we couldn't go to the same school. It's an interest of the fascists in Israel, and it's an interest of the PA, and they're basically askanut. Like when you try to make politics a profitable occupation and not an ideological path towards something greater. Times of Israel writer and teacher at Hebrew University of Jerusalem, I think. I don't know him. I don't think I've read something by him. But Hebrew University of Jerusalem is considered to be pretty based, like pretty versatile and critical, as opposed to, I think Lonerbox talked about this in one of these streams about Bar Ilan. Bar Ilan is considered like the most right-leaning university in Israel among the respected mainstream universities. I mean, because of course you have like super small places and colleges and stuff like that, but Bar Ilan is considered like the most right-leaning. And my grandfather, he's like the only other academic in my family, and he actually teaches Bible studies and mass media. He did his doctorate about David and the representation of David in the Bible. and they didn't take him. They asked him to come to do an interview, and they didn't take him. And he said it was because they were right leaning. I mean, okay, so your uncle is my uncle is a department chair at Bar-Ilan. I mean, it doesn't mean that everyone who teaches there is bad. Yeah, it's every school has its downfalls. I can see, like in my school in Ben Gurion, there are some like fascist speakers. They're compressed to some point because of the university. But of course, every school has its ups and downs, and Bar-Ilan is still, like as I said, a mainstream, respected university. Just among them, it's considered to be a right-leaning one. I don't know your uncle. He's definitely more on the right wing, so nothing about you said I disagree with. Yeah, I mean, you can be reasonable and right wing. You just need to be based. You can't be just like hateful, basically. So, do you want to go back to Mearsheimer? What do you want to do? I think we'll go back to Mearsheimer. I have to do the schoolwork. There we go. And there we go. Cool. Okay. Here we read Tony Blair letter saying blah 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 poison relations between the West and the Arab Islamic world. Yeah, schoolwork. I'm dying. I mean, I have like 3 days for this, and it consumes every moment, every waking moment. And warning that the policies of Bush and Prime Minister Ariel Sharon were one-sided and illegal. A final reason to question Israel's strategic value is that it does not act like a loyal ally. Israeli officials frequently ignore U.S. requests and renege on promises made to stop U.S. leaders, including past pledges to halt settlement constructions and to refrain from targeted assassinations of Palestinian leaders. I don't know about the targeted assassinations. Maybe I'm just not educated enough about that. But they did not hold settlements. Every time you have someone that's like relatively into settlements in their government, they are able to push it pretty hard. Able to lobby it through threatening to not vote and certain favor of laws, stuff like that. All the shitty stuff that happens in politics. A final reason to question Israel's strategic. This is what I just read. Moreover, Israel has provided sensitive U.S. military technology to potential U.S. rivals like China, in what the U.S. State Department Inspector General called a systematic and growing pattern of unauthorized transfers. According to the U.S. General Accounting Office, Israel also conducted the most aggressive espionage operations against the U.S. of any ally. In addition to the case of Jonathan Pollard, he was like a spy, who gave Israel large quantities of classified materials in the early 1980s, which Israel reportedly passed on to the Soviet Union to get more exit visas for Soviet Jews. I think that is morally ambiguous because at the end of the day, Israel is made to give a home for Jewish people. And if Soviet Jews needed to run away, and this is what it took, I don't know that I would make a different choice, A new controversy erupted in 2004 when it was revealed that a key Pentagon official, Larry Franklin, had passed classified information to an Israeli diplomat allegedly aided by 2 AIPAC officials. Israel is hardly the only country that spies on the United States, but its willingness to spy on its principal patron casts further doubt on its strategic value. Yeah, because we might be fucking them. Yeah. A dwindling moral case. Apart from its alleged strategic value, Israel's backers also argue that it deserves unqualified U.S. support because 1, it is weak and surrounded by enemies. 2, it is a democracy, which is a morally preferable form of government. 3, the Jewish people have suffered from the past crimes and therefore deserve special treatment. And 4, Israel's conduct has been morally superior to its adversaries' behavior. That also is, it's all shifting, it's all moving all the time, it's a lot of moving parts. I think at the moment, I don't know if you know, but a lot of the missiles that got here from Iran were intercepted by Jordan. Now, Israel has peace with Jordan, but it's like a cold peace. It's not a warm peace. We have agreements with them about water, about basically not joining an attack, but not helping each other militarily in like a blatant way. And the fact that one of the missiles landed inside of Jordan, inside Amman, like the main city, it's just, first of all, it's like so stupid and horrible by the Iranians to do that. It's so stupid to attempt to harm Israelis and just throw things all over and ending up, they like throw more than 200, I think they said, aircraft and missiles and stuff like that, and one of them injuring, and I think he's dead now, a Bedouin child, and harming some structures in one of the military bases in Nevatim. That's like news. It's not like something private or, classified that I'm saying. And so, of course, if they know they're going to get harmed and they have the ability to stop it, they have they have an obligation to take care of their people as well. And I heard that Iran is threatening them as well now, which is, that's wild. I mean, how can you expect them to not try to intercept missiles? They did not attack them. They did not attack Iran. They just tried to take care of their own people. I heard it was a Bedouin girl. Was it a boy that got injured? I'm not sure. I've read about a girl also, but then yesterday on the news they said a 10-year-old boy. So maybe it was both, and one of them is still alive and one of them is dead. I'm not sure. But the problem, not the problem, some of the problem, part of the problem with unrecognized settlements and unrecognized villages, which a lot of Bedouins live in unrecognized villages, is the fact that they don't get the same protections from the government. They don't get the same. We have shelters everywhere, in every city, in every neighborhood. You have shelters every street corner, and the problem with settlements, with like crazy settlers putting up a tent in the middle of nowhere and expecting to be guarded, is they don't have any shelter. And the problem with some of the unrecognized villages is that they might be there for a long, long time, but Israel is refusing to recognize them because it doesn't want to spend money on them. So it gets to a point that they live on generators. They don't have any electricity. They don't have any regular water structures to get them water in a reasonable way. And of course, they don't have shelters. They don't have miguniot also. Miguniot is like the round, huge things that you can see all over the places around Gaza. So that's like if you're in the middle of the street, these are the places that you have less than a minute to get into shelter. So you have to see some place and run towards it and get in there in like 5-10 seconds. So that's what they call miguniot. Like migun is basically, it's like a chunk of metal and concrete that's supposed to help a lot if it falls like around you. If it falls right beside it, you're fucked. If it falls right on top of you, you're kind of fucked. If it falls anywhere around you and you're on the floor, you'll be fine. So they don't even have that. I was talking to some girl from my school, and she lives in an unrecognized, like from university, and she lives in an unrecognized village, and she was like terrified when they said that the Iranians sent all these bombs. And I started like giving her advice that I have from the army. I served in the military, like most Israelis, like most, I should say, like most non-Orthodox, non-Jewish Orthodox Israelis, and the thing that you have to do there, I mean, when someone throws a grenade at you, you have to run, be like on the other side of some pile of dirt, or preferably inside a hole in the ground. Put your hands on your head and look towards the ground, and that's it. And I was starting like giving her that kind of advice because I didn't know what to say. I just tried to say like, well, do you have some place to sleep in Beersheba tonight and tomorrow? They have, all sorts of that thing. And at some point I started saying like, maybe you should see if you can like dig some holes next to your house, put some sand over there, chunks of sand and things that would protect you, and take the blow if something flies towards you. That you should lay in the ground with your head down and not look up, because that's how you get really, really fucked. And yeah, and don't park just beside your house, because your house is probably not made out of super hard concrete, and if your car blows up, your house blows up. Yeah, it's not an easy situation when you do have shelter. So I think it's like 10 times terrifying when you don't have a shelter. This is like heartbreaking. I cannot. Anyway, school. She's doing this work also right now. I told her, well, maybe we'll just like exchange some notes, trying to get through this, even though everything is scary. So maybe I'll pass at least. So we read through this. Let's read it again so it sits good in my head and I'll remember that is page 8. Here we are. Apart from its alleged strategic value, Israel's backers, and this is, sorry for the dude that asked in we're reading Mearsheimer and Stephen Watts, I think his name is. They're writing about U.S. and Israeli relations. Apart from its alleged strategic value, Israel's backers also argue that it deserves Israel's backers also argue that it deserves unqualified U.S. support because 1, it is weak and surrounded by enemies. 2, it is a democracy, which is morally preferable form of government. 3, the Jewish people have suffered from the past crimes and therefore deserve special treatment. This is also a result of American guilt, basically. That's what I think. I mean, they didn't want to take us when they knew. I don't think they knew there was going to be a genocide in Europe, but it was evident that Jews are hated and prosecuted in Europe, and they didn't want to take us in. And 4, Israel's conduct has been morally superior to its adversaries' behavior. On close inspection, however, each of these arguments is unpersuasive. There is a strong moral case for supporting Israel's existence, but that is not in jeopardy. Okay, so it used to be not in jeopardy. Now, I think people are not so sure about that. Viewed objectively, Israel's past and present conduct offers no moral. Israel's past and present conduct offers no moral basis for privileging it over the Palestinians. That's debatable, but not. I wouldn't call it untrue, but I do think it's debatable. Israel is often portrayed as a weak and besieged, a Jewish David surrounded by a hostile Arab Goliath. This image has been carefully nurtured by Israeli leaders and sympathetic writers, but the opposite image is closer to the truth. Contrary to popular belief, the Zionists had larger, better equipped, and better led forces during the 1947 to 1949 War on Independence, and the Israeli Defense Forces won quick and easy victories against Egypt in 1956 and against Egypt, Jordan, and Syria in 1967, before large-scale U.S. aid began flowing to Israel. That's true, but that's a result. I mean, from what I've read some of Benny Morris. I've read a lot of things that came up through in the last few months. I believe this is a result of their militaries being unorganized and that they didn't have to be in such great conflicts up to that point. So they didn't have to. They got to a point that everything was so corrupt within that their abilities were compromised. And when Israel was fighting and basically fighting through also terrorist actions and also defense actions prior to Israel's existence, then the military became such a corrupt and unorganized place that a smaller organized force that was strategically superior in the sense that they had strategized for longer about this and they thought it was coming. They weren't oblivious about it coming uh, when the UN offer came around. That made it so that the IDF was at a point that they could defeat three armies at the same time and and get to a point that we could have a country and some borders and even broaden our borders to some extent. I hated Moodle so much. Yeah, well, it's a relatively good program, like structure of a thing, and when your teacher knows how to use it, it's very useful. La la la, blah blah blah. Before okay, so they did all of that and they won everyone before large scale US aid began flowing to Israel. These victories offer eloquent evidence of Israeli patriotism, organizational ability, and military power prowess, but they also revealed that Israel was far from helpless even in its earliest years. Yeah, but lecturers are boomers. They can barely operate their phones. Some of them are like that and some of them are not. They have some of my lecturers are, not young, like 60 plus, and they have a podcast. Or because of this war, you had lots of people doing reserves, serving in reserve force in the army. So you had a lot of Zoom classes. You had a lot of pre-recorded classes and a lot of basically they had to take a step forward technologically so we could actually learn this year, and they want our money, they want our time, so they have to put a little effort into that, and they did. I mean, props to them. Some of them did a good job, some of them were shit, yeah, but in my case the person that was shittiest about it was a relatively younger person. I think she's like 45-ish or 50-ish, one of my lecturers, and she was terrible about it. Like nothing worked. She was so I mean the papers and articles that she attached worked and it was okay, but she was such a bad teacher and technologically a failure. And Tel Aviv University was like that, but I'm talking like 6-7 years ago. Yeah, of course time changes, and I think the corona made it obvious that you could not be in this sphere and be entirely technologically clueless. Okay. Today, Israel is the strongest military power in the Middle East. Its conventional forces are far superior to its neighbors, and it is the only state in the region with nuclear weapons. Egypt and Jordan signed peace treaties with Israel, and Saudi Arabia was offered to do so as well, and almost did it before this war. It's said to be one of the reasons this war started, because Iran wanted to push back, and so it pushed its proxies to start this war. Or there's a lot of ways to do it. It doesn't have to be calling up and say, hey, this is the time to kill and burn and rape people. But it could be like, oh my God, I can't believe they did this. You should maybe do something about it. And, like gossiping around enough to make something happen. Good thing I failed uni to not study during COVID. I wonder what if October 7th wouldn't happen on a geopolitical level. I think what would have happened is that we would have some kind of normalization with Saudi Arabia, and I know that there were some economic works on their way, and that's some of the reason that the Saudi prince was very, very careful in his words after that attack. And he said he cared about all the innocent people dying, and he wasn't like, there's no mention of Zionist opponent or enemy or stuff like that. I think in what happened in Israel with judicial reform, I don't know if we would have been able to push it back if it weren't for the war. And of course, I would rather have something that I can later fight inside my government instead of thousands of people dying, including people that I know. But I think it would be very hard to get through the judicial reform, and that we would have some kind of normalization or like a cold peace with Saudi Arabia. And I think America would have dealt with their own shit. And I think Joe Biden, he would have had like the general, regular leftist pushback, but he wouldn't have this type of pushback of people, blaming him for genocide and saying that Trump might be a better option. Trump is demented. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. You remember that? Yeah. One of my neighbors died, and one of my bar friends is still like captive. It's such a small country. Everyone knows someone who died or is captive. I haven't been to Israel since last year, which was unthinkable to me. Do you mean like I'm still thankful all my friends and family have been okay for the past 6 months? Yeah, it is a miracle. I mean, living here, and I had like days when I was just fighting with people on Instagram, and they like don't believe that there's a war happening in Israel as well. They're like, "Oh, you're just carpet bombing in Gaza, and that's it. That's all that's happening." But they don't realize there are bombs above my house. I mean, I put like in my Instagram story, yeah, like interceptions. So you still have traces of it in the sky after it happens. So I mean, you like some days you go out after you go into shelter, and you go out and you see the traces of interceptions, and you see like 6 or 7 above your house. That's it's very, very real, to say the least. Anyway, I'm in Gold. That's how I called it, at least. That's what I meant. What's Galut? Okay, yeah. Last time I visited, we also had rockets flying over my head. Yeah, I mean, I think you'd get used to it. I don't think. I know you get used to it. I mean, at some point you have to go to the bar. You have to meet your friends, and yeah, people are dying, and there's a war. But you have, I mean, if you go crazy above that, then you're fucked anyway. And don't be. I mean, Galut is fine. If you're fine with it, Galut is fine. I think even if you're a Jew guy in Galut, you still have an interest in having a place that you're safe as a Jewish person within state, because I mean, no one would shout at the street at me because I'm Jewish. People would shout at me for other reasons, but not because I'm Jewish, and that has happened before abroad, including like people like saying that there's no room in a restaurant, or not wanting to let us into a party, or a lot of small things. And I'm a woman, so a lot of the times people are less confrontational with women, and I have guy friends who have like people come up to them and you're a baby killer. I would kill you right now. Let's see you do. I mean, what's going on? Let's go outside. All sorts of things like that, like unpleasant things. Let's call it that. Schoolwork. Sorry, guys. I know it's like interesting, but my life also consists of reading American academics, thinking about my life. Never happened to me, to be frank. I get the occasional joke sometimes. Well, jokes are okay. I mean, if jokes are funny, they're okay. That's my perception of it. I mean, trans jokes, Jew jokes, Arab jokes. I have Arab friends. If I have a funny joke about Arabs, I'll tell it next to them, whatever. And if it's funny, they'll laugh. And if it's not funny, it was probably kind of racist. Yeah, it always feels awkward for me to mention my family in Israel. Some people take it like a political statement when I'm just saying where my family lives. Yeah. People take your origin and they think they're they don't see how racist it is to do that. They're just like oblivious to it. I'm traveling and haven't got much data. See you later. See you. Bye, Limey. Cool. So schoolwork. Today, blah, 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 it's convention, blah, 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 peace treaties, blah, blah, blah. Syria has lost its Soviet patron. Iraq has been decimated by 3 disastrous wars, and Iran is hundreds of miles away. And, and they still got to us. The Palestinians barely have effective police, let alone a military that could threaten Israel. According to a 2005 assessment by Tel Aviv University prestigious Jaffe Center for Strategic Studies, the strategic balance decidedly favors Israel, which has continued to widen the qualitative gap between its own military capability and the deterrence powers of those of its neighbors. If backing the underdog were a compelling rationale, the United States would be supporting Israel's opponent. Okay. Aiding a fellow democracy? ? American backing is often justified by the claim that Israel is a fellow democracy surrounded by hostile dictatorships. Where is this from? This is, I'll just go up and come back. Israel lobbying U.S. foreign policy. This is, I think, Chicago University of Chicago and Harvard University. Yeah. John J. Mearsheimer, he's like a very respected realist theorist in international relations, and Stefan M. Walt. I don't know about him. Don't know too much about him. And that is it. That's the thing. 2006. Yeah. It's not like a new thing. It's just still irrelevant in a lot of ways. But what I need to extrapolate from this paper is not like what was going on there. It's the strategic possibilities and benefits that Israel and the U.S. have from this relationship. That argument feels so silly. If one person is capable of taking others one-on-one, it doesn't mean anything. It can be one against many. What do you mean? You mean like about this, about the United States would be supporting Israel's opponents? I think at some point, maybe I wouldn't phrase it like that. Maybe I wouldn't say like if backing the underdog was a compelling rationale, the United States should be supporting Israel's opponent. I would probably say that it should be supporting the Palestinians if that was the compelling rationale behind their decision to intervene with countries in this region. Okay. Sun is getting to me. Aiding a fellow democracy, question mark. American backing is often justified by the claim that Israel is a fellow democracy surrounded by hostile dictatorships. This rationale sounds convincing, but it cannot account for the current level of U.S. support. After all, there are many democracies around the world, but none receive the lavish support that Israel does. The United States has overthrown democratic governments in the past and supported dictators when this was thought to advance U.S. interests. And it has good relations with a number of dictatorships today. Thus, being democratic neither justifies nor explains America's support for Israel. At least you have sun here in Finland is great. Yeah, I mean, it's nice having a lot of sun, but it gets really hot and the electricity bill gets crazy. The shared democracy rationale is also weakened by the aspect of Israeli democracy that are at odds with core American values. The United States is a liberal democracy where people of any race, religion, or ethnicity are supposed to enjoy equal rights. By contrast, Israel has explicitly founded a Jewish state, and citizenship is based on the principle of blood kinship. That's not entirely true. There are aspects of democracy through which you can get a citizenship that don't comply you to be Jewish, but there is, of course, like right of return, which is a principle of blood kinship. Yeah. We had snow last week. We don't get snow here. It's the middle of the desert. I mean, don't you ever want to move from those countries, like where it's always great? It feels so depressing. I mean, having bombs over your house is depressing too, but at least you have sun. Okay. Given this conception of citizenship, it is not surprising that Israel's 1.3 million Arabs are treated as second-class citizens. This is currently it's 2 million Arabs in Israel that are citizens, and I think you could argue that by racism, then yes, they are at some points lower class citizens, but it's not like engraved in law. Like in the law, there's no stopping you from being in places of power. There's no stopping you in a lot of places. The only thing that I can say that is absolutely a detriment to the ability of Israel democracy is the fact that you can only get married through Rabbanut, which is Jewish. So if you cannot prove your Jewishness, which is something that happens to Jews that came from the USSR, because you were not allowed to do any religious ceremonies there. So they did not marry in a Jewish fashion. They were not buried in a Jewish fashion. So they could not prove their Jewishness, even though they came to Israel because they were ridiculed for their Jewishness, for their religion. You can't get married like that. You need to marry abroad or marry online and then submit your papers to the government to have them recognize your marriage. And Muslim people can do that through I think they have like a different court of marriage, and then they have to submit it to Israeli authorities as well. Been thinking of moving back to the U.S. Was just in Florida visiting family last week. Sun and ocean is not so bad. Yeah, I mean, but the warnings now in Israel by I keep forgetting how they actually call it, but like the dudes that tell you what to do when there's war, like you need to have 6 bottles of waters in your house. You have to be 10 seconds away from shelter, stuff like that. So they said you cannot go in the water. You cannot go to the beach right now, all over the country, not just in the south. Well, I have to say I enjoy great vibes most of the time. Yeah, I mean, it is a vibe. Maybe I'm just not used to it because I'm here for all of my life. Yeah, I wish Israel would just move to civil partnership and let religions do their religious stuff. Um, I would argue that um, there does need to be a limitation on religious things. I mean, if it were actually a fully democratic place and had less of a place for, um, didn't have as much of a place for Judaism engraved in law as we do, that might be a problem because an Arab majority could come and could become, and then it would kind of defeat the purpose of having a place for Jews to be the hegemon, and by that being safer. Wait, I'm moving so I won't get burnt because I'm kind of white. Ugh. I'll bring some drugs. Scary sunshine. It's cute, I guess. Well, put you something more to watch. I'll bring some joint instruments. Do we want to hear the first dudes or the second dudes we heard? Maybe we can. I don't know. I know. This is like super lefty dudes that make very interesting music. This song is called Satirikanim, and it's very interesting. It talks about Sabo and Shatila, talks about a lot of stuff about like, stupidness, foolishness. I don't know. Anyway, I'll put it on screen in a moment. I wish there were like a translated version. I wonder if I could. Is there a wait? No, there's no subtitles. Shame.
הנה הרגליים של היהודי האחרון נשטפות בידיים של מגדלנה ממי האפסיים של חוף תל אביב מהחרטום החרוך של האלטלנה מתעמר העשן השחור מתעמר העשן השחור מתעמר העשן השחור מגיח הנחש הקדוש מן הבור איפה האנשים שיצאו בגוף שלהם את הצעדות של הרב כהנא איפה האנשים שיצאו לרחובות אחרי סברה ושתילה יקומו וירימו את היד יקומו וירימו את היד יקומו ויראו את עצמם הנה התאילם מתפתל נובע מן האספלט כמו שיחים סבוכים הנה משלחת נסיכי המטרופולין למושבת הבת בברלין בטח קנית ספה נפתחת כמו מניפה של צבעים רזים בטח כבר הצבת את הסלון שלך כמו מחנה פליטים ובטח יש לילות שאתה בוכה וגולל את הפיד ושוחה בטח יש לילות שאתה בוכה וגולל את הפיד ובוכה ושוחה בים השחור חירום, מצב חירום. הזריקו את גדוד הסאטיריקנים, יהדות החומר, ינק בעומר, בחורשה בשיחקנו בפרטיזן, מתמזל מזלך להחזיק בעת. אחוז בו כמו בחרב, בשיפולי ההר במערה נידחת, להקים מערה ולחכות לערב. איפה האנשים שיצאו בגוף שלהם את הצעדות של הרב כהנא? איפה האנשים שיצאו לרחובות אחרי סברה ושתילה? יקומו וירימו את היד, יקומו וירימו את היד, יקומו ויראו את עצמם. איפה האנשים שיצאו בגוף שלהם את הצעדות של הרב כהנא? איפה האנשים שיצאו לרחובות אחרי סברה ושתילה? יקומו וירימו את היד, יקומו וירימו את היד, יקומו ויראו את עצמם.
Yeah, I really like them. They're like far relatives of mine. Trying to think like what other music would I put for you. I'm trying to think what kind of maybe more Palestinian music I know that I really like that I could put. Oh my God, there's this clip. They're like Arab French dudes. This is one of the most amazing video clips that I ever saw. It's like, fuck, yeah. How do I center this? This is one of the clips that really makes me feel like we're so similar, you know?
We've waited for this day. We shed some tears of love now.
Yeah.
Like
Music
the
and
tears
video.
that in the rain.
I mean, what you've seen
When
here.
sun of the day
Yeah.
now waking up. Yeah. There's nobody like my mom. There's no place like my home since I was born. When I was young. The flavor is so strong. I've missed it so long. Yeah.
This is like a super Middle Eastern thing too. Just the Muslim family, not like. finish this and go back to Mearsheimer.
These people are my heroes. From the earth to the sky. They line me up to flying clouds. They ever get me high like a woodland smoke. I'm shining like the moon. I'm feeling like a bloom on the bright sun. I remember when I was young. The flavor is so strong. I've missed it so long. Yeah.
Love it. Amazing. I think this is one of like the greatest clips that I've ever saw. It's just super touching. From Swedish musical. What? You want to send it? I'll play it next time. I need to do something and stop Mearsheimer. Fun with Mearsheimer. This is what we are doing today. Okay, where were we? So they call them second-class citizens, even though we did not substantiate that really. People in the occupied territories are, of course, don't have the same rights, but that's because they're occupied territories and they're not supposed to be occupied. Oh fuck. Yeah, I thought it would be okay. Oi. Well. Yes. Great. Thanks. Thanks for the updates. Cool. So, Mearsheimer. Okay. Second class citizens. Given this conception of citizenship, it is not surprising that 1.3 million, that Israel's 1.3 million Arabs are, this is currently 2 million, yes, are treated as second-class citizens, or that a recent Israeli government commission found that Israel behaves in a neglectful and discriminatory manner towards them. There is like racist, there is like racist behavior towards Arabs, sure, but I think that in the law, there's not like discriminatory action against Arabs, like stated. Okay. Similarly, Israel does not permit Palestinians who marry Israeli citizens to become citizens themselves. This has not always been true, and does not give these spouses the right to live in Israel. This is a result of women from Gaza, Palestinian women from Gaza. I studied it in gender studies that has to do with Israeli nationality. A lot of Arab people started marrying multiple wives, which is permitted in Islam, from Gaza, marrying multiple women from Gaza, the Palestinian women that did not have citizenships, and made them citizens by that before it was illegal, and now it's like this. Basically, they did this, and they also stopped multiple marriages, but they didn't really stop it. They stopped it, and now it has to be authorized by a Islamic authority, but from the Palestinian side, and then registered in Israel, like their marriages overall. But the PA does not take care of their women. Like a lot of the Arab countries that allow multiple marriages, you need to prove that you can take care financially of two households, which is not an easy task. So even if it's legal in a lot of these countries, they don't do it. So in Israel, because it's not organized enough, and because the PA also like deals with making political and financial gain, the leadership, I mean, yeah, more than taking care of its people a lot of the time, then we're stuck in a very, very weird situation like this. The Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem is an organization of former combat fighters that served in the West Bank and report about like human rights issues there, and report about like basically violations of human rights in the West Bank from their experiences. And people really, really hate them. A lot of the people in Israel hate them. And actually, I manage a bar here in Be'er Sheva, and we wanted to host Shovrim Shtika, which is similar, which is also like people who served in the West Bank and want to talk about their experiences and how human rights are violated there. And the police closed the bar. We had a demonstration in front of the bar by some right-wing people. It wasn't really it wasn't that big like in live, but it did make like a name for the bar as a lefty bar for years to come, which a lot of the people who work there, including me and the owner, we're both very leftist, but our crowd is very mixed, and I'm glad that's the case. I mean, I would prefer it if it would have been like characterized as a very liberal place and an accepting place, and not like leftist, because leftist implies that some people are less invited. Yeah, homogenous is boring. That is super based. Yeah, we have everybody. One of my friends from the bar is a super big BB supporter, and he is like, he's not like an academic, but he's super like, he's a philosophical person. So a lot of times I bring things to him and we talk about uh, political philosophy for hours. Um, I'm glad he feels welcome. He actually was in the demonstration, like against the bar at that day, which was it's yeah, it's very weird. But I'm glad that he feels welcome now, like he feels at home. Okay. The Israeli Human Rights B'Tselem called this restriction a racist law that determines who can live here according to a racist criteria. That's true. Again, it didn't used to be like this. 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Yeah, more like 2 Jews, 6 opinions. Such laws may be understandable given Israel's founding principles, but they are not consistent with America's image of democracy. Israel's democratic status is also undermined by its refusal to grant the Palestinians a viable state of their own. Israel controls the lives of about 3.8 million Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, while colonizing lands on which the Palestinians have long dwelt. Israel is formally democratic, but the millions of Palestinians that it controls are denied full political rights, and the shared democracy rationale is correspondingly weakened. Yeah, so again, this is about like the occupied territories a lot. It less. I don't think it applies. Like every Arab Israeli that has a citizenship, I think has the same rights as me. And of course, like in America, there is like discrimination. It doesn't mean that the people who are discriminated against are second-class citizens. That's an important distinction to make. Yeah. Compensation for past crimes. A third moral justification in the history of Jewish suffering is the history of Jewish suffering in the Christian West, especially the tragic episode of the Holocaust. Because Jews were prosecuted for centuries and can only be safe in a Jewish homeland, many believe that Israel deserves special treatment from the United States. There is no question that the Jews suffered greatly from the despicable legacy of anti-Semitism, and that Israel's creation was an appropriate response to a long record of crimes. This history, as noted, provides a strong moral case for supporting Israel's existence, but the creation of Israel involved additional crimes against a largely innocent third party, the Palestinians. The history of these events is well understood. When political Zionism began in earnest in the late 19th century, there were only about 15,000 Jews in Palestine. In 1893, for example, the Arab comprised roughly 95% of the population, and though under Ottoman control, they had been in continuous possession of this territory for 1,300 years. Wait, I'll read that again. In 1893, for example, the Arabs comprised roughly 95% of the population, and though under Ottoman control, they had been in continuous possession of this territory for 1,300 years. Even when Israel was founded, Jews were only about 35% of Palestine's population and owned 7% of the land. The mainstream Zionist leadership was not interested in establishing a binational state or accepting a permanent solution of Palestine. The Zionist leadership was sometimes willing to accept partition as a first step, but this was a tactical maneuver and not the real objective. As David Ben-Gurion put it in late 1930, after the formation of a large army in the wake of the establishment of the state, we shall abolish partition and expand to the whole of Palestine. I don't know. I don't think this became policy. I think this was like in talking. Because I think formally they accepted the partition plan. And if the Palestinians would have accepted the partition plan as well, and we had continued from there to even if we both had accepted the partition plan, and then Israel would have went to war, we would have Israelis would have much less legitimacy in this war, and we would not be able to take as much territory as we did. That's my thought about that. To achieve this goal, the Zionists had to expel large numbers of Arabs from the territory that would eventually become Israel. That's also like, this is a very simplistic explanation of what happens. Yeah, some terrorist actions were made against Palestinians, and people fled after that because they were afraid they were going to face the same fate, and of course. I watched the Maurice Destiny Finkelstein Rabbani debate. Yeah, reminds me of Rabbani's responding to what if the Palestinians accepted the partition with Israel would kick them out anyways. I mean, again, maybe they would try. I wasn't alive then, so maybe the administration then would try to do that, but they would have much less legitimacy from the West. They would probably give backing to the Palestinians more if Israel was the instigator in that point. But because the Arab states around us were the instigators, and some of them did that because they wanted to gain territory as well, like Jordan, that wanted to gain more territory for itself and not just help the Palestinian people get their own state. It became a point where we had a moral superiority because we had accepted a plan, an international plan, and they did not. And instead of going back to negotiations, they started a war. This is also what I'm saying. It's also very simplistic. Yeah. There was simply no other way to accomplish their objective. Ben Gurion saw the problem clearly, writing in 1941 that it is impossible to imagine general evacuation of the Arab population without compulsion and brutal compulsion. Okay. Or as Israeli historian Benny Morris puts it, the idea of transfer is as old as modern Zionism and has accompanied its evolution in praxis during the past century. This opportunity came in 1947-49 when Jewish forces drove up to 700,000 Palestinians into exile. Israeli officials have long claimed that the Arabs fled because of their leaders told them to, which is partially true. But careful scholarship, much of it by Israeli historians like Morris, have demolished this myth. I mean, I did see the debate with Morris. I think he did claim that there were Arab leaderships that said they should flee, and some of them said they should stay. But even when they say you should stay, it does matter why they say that. I also dislike the framing people have of transfer when transfer was the solution offered by international bodies in other regions as a way to find peace, i.e., Germans in Europe and India. Yeah, and also people don't like the term transfer, but for instance, in Gaza, when we moved all the Israeli Jewish people out of there, that was transfer as well, but it was justified transfer, and it was transfer that was made in the view that we should not be there and we should let people make their own place over there, like Palestinian people. And that we should stop dying for messianic people who think this is more important than human life, of course. This is like the main reason it passed. In fact, most Arab leaders urged the Palestinian population to stay home, but fear of violent death at the hands of Zionist forces led most of them to flee. After the war, Israel barred the return of Palestinian exiles. I think they said they later fixed that to being like if anyone was here at the point of 1952, I think, then they could come back. So I'm not sure exactly why. I didn't research that ever. I never understood the Gazan settlers. Was Gaza important in Jewish history? Yes, it's supposed to be like part of Messianic people have this concept from the Bible of whole Israel, Israel Shlema, and it is part of the Messianic plan, because if all the Jews are in Israel and they have the whole of Israel by some Jewish perceptions, not all Jewish perceptions, then the Messiah would come. So they have like it's more important for them to be there than it is important for not having anyone else there. So there is also a religious part in there that could justify the staying of Palestinians in there, but because all of the violence, there was less of a justification for Jewish people to be there, because they were being guarded by, secular Jewish people who got into the army and just died there day after day for them. So it is important in history, and that's part of the reason that you can see now people like Smotrich, like freaking, maniacs, wanting to go back to Gush Katif in Gaza. Gush Katif is also like a settlement that was in the Gaza Strip before the evacuation that Ariel Sharon led. The fact that the creation of Israel entailed a moral crime against the Palestinian people was well understood by Israel's leaders. As Ben Gurion told Nahum Goldman, president of the World Jewish Congress, "If I were an Arab leader, I would never make terms with Israel. That is natural. We have taken their country. We come from Israel, but 2,000 years ago, and what is that to them? There has been anti-Semitism, the Nazis, Hitler, Auschwitz, but was that their fault? They only see one thing. We have come here and we stolen their country. Why should they accept that?" Since then, Israeli leaders have repeatedly sought to deny the Palestinians' national ambitions. Prime Minister Golda Meir famously remarked that there was no such thing as a Palestinian, and even Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, who signed the 1993 Oslo Accords, nonetheless opposed creating a full-fledged Palestinian state. One of the criticisms of the Oslo Accords was that within Israel there was a lot of racism towards Mizrahi Jews. So trying to make peace with people who are very similar to us, to Palestinians, and not solving these problems inwards was making this fail anyway, even if he wasn't assassinated. And of course, Arafat was being an asshole and kept furthering the goalpost, moving the goalpost, and he fucked them as well. I think if Arafat was more directed at helping his people, they would have gained a lot during those talks, even after Rabin died. Cool. And of course, Arafat was being an asshole. Yeah. Yeah, probably, Bibi. I saw like rayonot interviews. I saw like interviews with Bibi when he was younger, and he seemed like a legit capitalist thinker, like an okay one that has based opinions and a good goal or meaning. But he became, power hungry and full of fear, and now he's just trying to get out. He's trying to not get in jail. That's the reason the war is going so far. That's the reason that some of the talks about getting back some of the captives have failed, because he does not want this war to end. And some of the people who deal with international relations and are like future tellers, and like there's one of those in Israel, and he said this is going to go on for 4 to 5 years because of Bibi. I remember some videos from the 80s and 90s before he got big, and he sounded like a normal person. Yeah, he sounded like a person who was somewhat traumatized, which is fine. I mean, he was a combatant. His brother died in war, and was a really big war hero. I can understand how someone gets to a reasonable place and that is also filled with pain from where he was. And I can understand like a capitalist logic, of course, and a liberal perception inside of that, which used to be the Likud. The Likud used to be just like a capitalist, slightly right wing, not this terrible monster it's become. Yeah, past 30 years seems like he's just been power hungry, unfortunately. Yeah, I remember him in politics all of my life, and he's always been a liar. He's always promised security, and one of my teachers always said, like, when it seems like Bibi is getting weaker, there's always going to be a war. Every 2 to 3 years, you have a war. You have, the cutting the grass things, the mivtzaim, small operations that, it's small for the government, but people die from bombs here. People die from bombs there. It's not small for the people on the ground. I mean, it's relatively small. It's not like now, but it is small. But it is meaningful. Pressure from let's go back to so even Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, who signed the 1993 Oslo Accords, nonetheless opposed creating a full-fledged Palestinian state. Pressure from extremist violence and a growing Palestinian population has forced subsequent Israeli leaders to disengage from some of the occupied territories and to explore territorial compromise. But no Israeli government has been willing to offer the Palestinians a viable state of their own. Even Prime Minister Ehud Barak, came to power after Rabin was assassinated, purportedly generous offer at Camp David in July 2000 would only have given the Palestinians a disarmed and dismembered set of Bantustans under de facto Israeli control. Okay, I think. Okay, let's assume that's true. That would still be better than what's happening now. That would still be better. I mean, let's say after the detachment from Gaza Strip, when we took all the Israeli Jewish people out, we did not have a blockade. Yeah, we started having a blockade because they imported things that were not for their living and for their people. They started importing things that were for warfare, that for making warfare. So that's why the blockade happened. And I think if you have a disarmed Palestinian state, then you could potentially have an open border and have them come work here and have us, help plan things there. But a spiteful regime and spiteful leadership would not let that happen. And I don't think what's happening now is better. I think the PA like fucked up big in that. They should have taken it and they should have expanded from there. And not taking it is like, you're not giving me a house, so I'm not going to take the room. Europe's crimes against the Jews provided a clear moral justification for Israel's right to exist. But Israel's survival is not in doubt, even if some Islamic extremists make outrageous and unrealistic references to wiping it off the map. And the tragic history of the Jewish people does not obligate the United States to help Israel, no matter what it does today. Virtuous Israeli versus evil Arabs. That is a problem. That is an optics problem for the Palestinian people. The final moral argument portrayed Israel as a country that has sought peace at every turn and showed great restraint even when evoked. The Arabs, by contrast, are said to have acted with great wickedness. This narrative, which is endlessly repeated by Israeli leaders and American apologists such as Alan Dershowitz, is yet another myth. In terms of casual behavior, Israel's conduct is not morally distinguishable from the actions of its opponent. That's what I said before. I mean, we had our own terrorists. They were against the actual colonization of England, of the UK. I feel like disarmament is not a crazy thing. Disarmed and controlled Germany and Japan after wars uh, for like a decade. Japan is still officially demilitarized. Yeah, it's not really demilitarized, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of reasonable things in saying you have opened war against us multiple times. We should get to a point where we could start going forward. And starting to go forward would entail not giving you an access to Israel, which would mean a full blockade, which I think would further the peace. But having like a neighboring country, even if we don't have peace with it, that is demilitarized. I mean, with its agreements with other places, it could still have a lot of power, considering the range and size of the Arab world and the Arab countries and their power in the world. It's very, very meaningful. It's not a thing to ignore. Yeah, I think it's a point that they should have really took into account the Arab leadership of the Palestinians at the time, and they should have went off from there and not expect to get everything, because it's like, do you know the Sean video about Hiroshima and Nagasaki and about the nuclear bomb? How he said that, I don't know, I didn't read his sources, so I'm just like saying what I know from his video. He said that Americans wanted Japan to surrender unconditionally, which was one of the things they didn't want to do because of their feudal system. Like, they had a king and all that, and they wanted to keep their honor. And they came to a point where they were able to agree about almost anything except something about their king, or their prince, or whatever, Caesar. So, and then I think it was, he said, like the night before or 2 nights before they dropped the bomb, Japan surrendered completely, but they claim they didn't see that, and they sent the bombs anyway. So I think pride is one thing that fucked that, but another thing that fucked that was America wanting to have guinea pigs, basically. Israeli scholarship shows that the early Zionists were far from benevolent toward the Palestinian Arabs. The Arab inhabitants did resist the Zionists' encroachment, which is hardly surprising given the Zionists were trying to create their own state on Arab lands. The Zionists responded vigorously, and neither side owns the moral high ground during this period. The same scholarship also reveals that the creation of Israel in 1947-48 involved explicit acts of ethnic cleansing, including exclusion, massacre, and rapes by Jews. Furthermore, Israel's subsequent conduct towards its Arab adversaries and its Palestinian subjects has often been brutal, belaying any claim to morally superior conduct. Between 1949 and 1956, for example, Israeli forces killed around 2,500 and 5,000 Arab infiltrators, the overwhelming majority of them unarmed. The IDF conducted numerous cross-border raids against its neighbors in the early 1950s, And though these actions were portrayed as defensive responses, they were actually part of a broader effort to expand Israel's borders. I think there is a claim to be made about needing to have a space where the other side doesn't have an army as well, because that keeps us safer. But it's very it's hard to tell if you don't have good records. Even though these actions were pursued, Israel's expansionist ambitions also led it to join Britain and France in attacking Egypt in 1956. And Israel withdrew from the lands it had conquered only in the face of intense U.S. pressure. That was also a right-wing governor. I think it was Begin. Begin was a terrorist, but he was the one who signed agreements with some of the agreements with Egypt and gave back the Sinai Peninsula, which is a huge chunk of what they call whole Israel. Yeah. The IDF also murdered hundreds of Egyptian prisoners of war in both the 1956 and 1967 wars. In 1967, it expelled between 100,000 and 260,000 Palestinians from newly conquered West Bank and drove 80,000 Syrians from the Golan Heights. It was also complicit in the massacre of 700 innocent Palestinians at the Sabra and Shatila refugee camps following the invasion of Lebanon in 1982. That's true. And the song that we heard before actually talks about it. It says there were protests against it. There was inner Israeli opposition to this horrible act. It's not. I mean, it's missing context on both sides of the people within these groups that had something to say about also about like Palestinian leadership refusing all sorts of offers, and also Israeli people trying to resist terrible acts by their own government. Yeah. It was also complicit in the massacre of 700 innocent Palestinians in the Sabra and Shatila refugee camps following its invasion of Lebanon in 1982, and an Israeli investigatory commission found then Defense Minister Sharon personally responsible for these atrocities. Yeah. He did like interpret it to his own fantasy, I guess. One of my uncles thinks giving that Sinai back was a mistake. No, I think taking it in the first place was a mistake because Gaza used to be Egypt's problem. Gaza was filled with refugees even before all of this happened, and before it was Israel and then cut off of Israel. It was filled with refugees when it belonged to Egypt. And when we took the Sinai Peninsula and then gave it back, then Begin, being a right-wing Zionist and somewhat committed to a more messianic and religious crowd, wanted to keep Gaza because it is significant to whole Israel, which was a huge mistake because I think the Egyptians knew they were giving us their problem at that point. So no, giving the Sinai back was not a mistake, but not giving Gaza with it back was a mistake. Israeli personnel have tortured numerous Palestinian prisoners, systematically humiliated and inconvenienced Palestinian civilians, and used force indiscriminately against them on numerous occasions. Yes. During the First Intifada, 1987 to 1991, for example, the IDF distributed truncheons on its troops and encouraged them to break the bones of Palestinian protesters. The Swedish Save the Children organization estimated that 23,600 to 29,900 children required medical treatment for their beating injuries in the first 2 years of the Intifada. Baton. Cool, thanks. with nearly 1/3 sustained broken bones. Nearly 1/3 of the beaten children were aged 10 and under. Israel's response to the Second Intifada, 2000-2005, has been even more violent, leading Haaretz to declare that the IDF is turning into a killing machine, who's efficiently in awe-inspiring, yet shocking. The IDF fired 1 million bullets in the first day of the uprising, which is far from a measured response. Since then, Israel has killed 3.4 Palestinians for every Israeli lost, the majority of whom have been innocent bystanders. The ratio of Palestinians to Israeli children killed is even higher, 5.7 to 1. Okay, so Israeli forces have also killed several foreign peace activists, including a 23-year-old American woman crushed by an Israeli bulldozer in March 2003. Cool. These facts about Israel's conduct have been amply documented by numerous human rights organizations, including prominent Israeli groups, and are not disputed by fair-minded observers. And that is why 4 former officials, Shin Bet Shabak, the Israel Domestic Security Organization, condemned Israel's conduct during the Second Intifada in November 2003. One of them declared, "We are behaving disgracefully." And another termed Israel conduct patently immoral. But isn't Israel entitled to do whatever it takes to protect its citizens? Doesn't the equal evil of terrorism justify continuing U.S. support, and even if Israel often responds harshly? In fact, this argument is not compelling moral justification either. Palestinians have used terrorism against their Israeli occupiers, and their willingness to attack innocent civilians is wrong. This behavior is not surprising. However, because Palestinians believe they have no other way to force Israeli concessions, as former Prime Minister Barak once admitted, he had been born as a Palestinian. He would have joined a terrorist organization. Yeah, that is, based. Sorry. I think I'm gonna go inside. It's getting weird with the sun. Cool. אתה רוצה להגיד לאנשים? Yes. Cool. We're changing backgrounds. Just the other side of my house. What can I put without them fucking me over for copyright? I'll just put the news. 1 minute. Al Jazeera English Live.
markets.
All the farmers in my area have crops that they couldn't harvest because the RSF robbed us of our equipment and fuel to operate the machinery. If you do manage to harvest something, they chase you and take away what you've collected.
The UN says cereal production alone has almost halved in the past year and warns of what may turn into the world's largest hunger crisis if it's not already.
Given that there is no Sudanese in the entire country that is untouched by the conflict, people simply will not have the means to be able to put the food on the table. And this is why we are desperately concerned.
Aid agencies say at least 18 million Sudanese are already going hungry, with 5 million of them just one step away from famine. Most live in areas where it's difficult to get food deliveries. What's complicating the situation even further is the ever-widening scope of the conflict. RSF paramilitary have recently managed to strike as far east as the state of Gadaref. Government leaders have the competing priorities of humanitarian intervention to prevent famine and military action to provide security. Mohammed Val, Al Jazeera, Port Sudan.
Sudan's former Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok is calling for an end to the fighting. Hamdok is participating in an international aid conference in Paris to highlight the plight of millions of Sudanese affected by the violence.
Our call comes to stop the war, address the humanitarian situation, stop targeting civilians, restore the path of democratic transformation, and open an expanded dialogue that leads to the formation of peaceful transition structures. These positions are in the interest of the nation and the citizens, and this will not be achieved except by returning to negotiations.
Well, women in Sudan are paying a heavy price in the continuing conflict. Sudan has the world's worst displacement crises, and half of all Sudanese forced from their homes are girls and women. The United Nations is warning that more than 7,000 new mothers could soon die if their health needs aren't met. And gender-based violence threatens almost 7 million Sudanese. To talk to us more about the plight of Sudanese women, we are now joined by Suleima Ishaq Al-Khalifa, who's head of the Sudanese government's unit combating violence against women. Suleima, thank you very much for joining us on Al Jazeera. What has been the most devastating consequence, the most devastating impact of the war on the women of Sudan?
It's the conflict-related sexual violence is one of the most devastating thing that's happened to the women in Sudan, because all types of the conflict-related sexual violence had happened to them. It's including forced marriages, including sexual slavery, trafficking, and kidnapping. And actually, it's not even getting the attention it needs regionally or internationally. Mm-hmm. And the reality in Sudan is really devastating. It's really agonizing, and it's really painful to see this kind of affect people, and how much that women had lost. They lost their properties. They are forced to leave their houses. They lost their savings, and the informal sector that have been actually held mostly by women who have been fighting poverty for decades now had just crashed down, and all these women had lost even their small jobs that keep their dignity and at least keep some of the expenses going on. And now they lost everything, and most of the people now are relying on the aid, which is not enough. And it's really humble in comparison to the crisis we're having.
Yeah.
The large number of IDPs is mostly women and girls. Mm-hmm. And they lost even the simple dignified support that actually enabled them for dignity and dignified support, like the sanitary pads, the essentials women needs. And it's not, people see it as not a priority, but it's actually very much priority to the women and girls, because it could prevent their accessibility, and it could prevent their participation. And any aid that is not gendered and does not actually look at the differences between men and women and then tailor this kind of needs for women and girls is not going to be enough.
Yeah, the humanitarian response. Yeah, the humanitarian response is not enough, and you say it's not even sufficient to meet the needs of women, the particular needs of women and girls. Many of them, as you mentioned, are living. Gender. Yeah, are living in displaced camps. What sort of conditions are they facing in these camps, whether in South Sudan, in Chad, and what help are they getting?
And actually, even in the people who managed to get to the camps, because the internally displaced people in Sudan is not living in camps. They are living in schools and border houses that need is actually their infrastructure is very weak. It's not very much safe. It's not even made to contain large number of people. So it's actually crashing down even those in safe places. And the other people in the camps, they are not getting enough. And I know that people, when they flee to Chad, they need basic things like to be for dignified support, and it's not there, and it's not enough.
Okay.
Women,
Let's go back to Mearsheimer. Sorry, just doing the thing that I have to do. Cool. Yeah, okay, so Ehud Barak said that if he would have been born a Palestinian, he would have joined a terrorist organization. I think this is a... again. Okay, cool. Let's go back to reading this. Finally, we should not forget the Zionists used terrorism when they were in a similarly weak position in trying to obtain their own state. True. Between 1944 and 1947, several Zionist organizations used terrorist bombings to drive the British from Palestine, then took the lives of many innocent civilians along the way. Israeli terrorists also murdered UN mediator Count Folk Bernadotte in 1948 because they opposed his proposal to internationalize Jerusalem. Nor were the perpetrators of these acts isolated extremists. The leaders of the murder plot were eventually granted an amnesty by the Israeli government, and one of them was elected to the Knesset. Another terrorist leader who approved the murder but was not tried was future Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. Indeed, Shamir openly argued that neither Jewish ethics nor Jewish tradition can disqualify terrorism as a means of combat. I think if you look at the Bible historically, that could be true, but if you're trying to look at Jewish morals, then you cannot justify that. The same with Islam, yeah. If you look at Islamic tellings, in the Quran, you could probably find places where violent resistance, and war was sanctioned, I should say, maybe by Allah. But if you try to go by Islamic morality, you would not be at the point that you can justify terrorism exactly like in Jewish religion, Judaism. Blah blah blah. Yitzhak Shamir. Rather, terrorism had a great part to play in our way against the occupier, Britain. If the Palestinians' use of terrorism is morally reprehensible today, so was Israel's reliance upon it in the past, and thus one cannot justify U.S. support for Israel on the grounds that its past conduct was morally superior. Yeah, okay. Israel may not have acted worse than in many other countries, but it clearly has not acted any better. And if neither strategic nor moral argument can account for America's support for Israel, how are we to explain it? The Israel lobby. The explanation lies in the unmatched power of Israeli lobby. Were it not for the lobby's ability to manipulate the American political system, the relationship between Israel and the United States would be far less intimate than it is today. What is the lobby? We use the lobby as a convenient shorthand term for the loose coalition of individuals and organizations who actively work to shape U.S. foreign policy in the pro-Israel direction. Our use of this term is not, he says all like the moral thing doesn't work and the strategic thing doesn't work, but there is still what he mentioned about history. I think the historical justification for a Jewish state still remains from the things that Mearsheimer and Wendt said here. Okay, the lobby, which is apparently the biggest driver of this relationship. Cool. Our use of the term is not meant to suggest that the lobby is a unified movement with a central leadership, or that individuals within it do not disagree on certain issues. The core of the lobby is comprised of American Jews who make a significant effort in their daily lives to bend the U.S. foreign policy so that it advances Israel's interests. Their activities go beyond merely voting for candidates who are pro-Israel to include better writing, financial contribution, and supporting pro-Israel organizations. But not all Jewish Americans are part of this lobby, because Israel is not a salient issue for many of them. In a 2004 survey, for example, roughly 36% of Jewish Americans said they were either not very or not at all emotionally attached to Israel. Jewish Americans also differ on specific Israel policies. Yeah. Many of the key organizations in the lobby, like AIPAC and the Conference of Presidential Major Jewish Organizations, CPMGO, are run by hardliners who generally support the expansionist policies of Israel's Likud party, same party Bibi is for a lot of years, including its hostility to the Oslo peace process. The bulk of U.S. Jewry, on the other hand, is more favorably disposed to making concessions to the Palestinians, as a few groups, such as Jewish Voice for Peace, strongly advocate such steps. Despite these differences, moderators and hardliners both support the steadfast, U.S. support for Israel. Have we discovered anything yet? Basically, Mearsheimer says here that the moral justification for Israel doesn't work because it has the same basis as Palestinian, because we both used terrorism to gain a national home, and the strategic thing doesn't really work. Again, as I've said, as I was reading it before, we don't know how much of the Israeli intelligence is helping the Americans, so we can't really say if this is true. It's true that in a military sense, we cannot help them when they fight in Iraq. We don't have enough power to do that, but we probably can give them a lot of serious intelligence. And he said what was it? Okay, so not strategic and not moral, but we still have the moral historical justification of Jews being prosecuted in for decades before, or for centuries before, and for that they do need a home, and the U.S. As a superpower, as an international superpower, should maybe be connected to that point of morally supporting giving a national home to people who were prosecuted before. So that might be a point that stands even through what he's said that doesn't really matter, like the strategic and the moral. So we still have moral historical, but it isn't so specific to America. So I can understand why he would discount that, because if you don't does Mearsheimer one party accepting peace proposal have any weight on their moral values? It doesn't seem so from what I've read here. It doesn't seem like he gives any gravity to the fact that Palestinian leadership has declined proposals over and over. But I think that the Palestinians not having a strong backing from an international power makes these offers more difficult to dissect and say if they were actually viable, or if they, there are a lot of reasons someone would say no. Of course, I could say from afar, yes, it is stupid to not take some propositions, but maybe they did have backdoor talking with someone that we don't know about, that maybe led them to believe that they would get to a better place, but then these people abandoned them. The Palestinians were fucked from a lot of directions, not just by Israel. So I think it's reasonable to say that we don't know. How much of that was viable, how much of that was a result of, let's say, Iran promising a military backing if they would decline, and then not following up with that promise. But he doesn't really talk about that. He basically is talking just about why should America support Israel. And I think he has like the democratic point still, and he has the historical moral thing, but I don't think that in the sense of America-Israel relationships, they should take into account that much the refusal for that for those propositions. If I'm trying to give him the space to think, and if I'm being good faith as much as I can. Yeah, I just feel like at a certain point you cut your losses. Yeah, of course. Imagine being Palestinian and knowing that you were offered what you were offered in the 30s, the 40s, the 90s compared to what's on offer now. That's true. That's true. And I think a lot of people, they do get a reality check when they study some history and they know what their own leadership did to them. I think that's true for both sides. I think a lot of Israeli people right now that oppose the settlement, that oppose expansionism, are furious about some of the concessions made earlier. It'd be demoralizing for sure. What do you mean? I mean, yeah, okay. So if one side offers peace and the other side refuses peace, of course that's a moral standpoint, yeah. But in the sense that who the U.S. should be backing, I don't think that has a lot of gravity, Okay. I'm going to be demoralizing for the Palestinian people. The change in offers. Do you mean about themselves or outwards? I don't understand what do you mean? Jewish Voice for Peace strongly advocates of steps. Despite these differences, moderators and hardliners both support steadfast U.S. support for Israel. Not surprisingly, American Jewish leaders can consult with Israel officials so that the former can maximize the influence in the United States. As one activist with major Jewish organization wrote, "It is routine for us to say this is our policy on a certain issue, but we must check what the Israelis think. As we as a community do not do it all the time. As in it'd be frustrating to see what could have been." Yes, of course. And the same Palestinian peace activist that I met after October 7th, she said, I mean, she's furious at their leadership, and I think I said it before, but a lot of the Palestinian leadership is comprised of people who are like Bibi, power hungry and money hungry, and do not see the future they're stopping. They don't see the lives that they're destroying by refusing these offers, believing they could gain some kind of power, or maybe someone's stuffing their pockets from Iran and saying you should not do that. You should keep the Palestinian people held to a certain level of misery, so that we could win the optics we could use more violence if you are more miserable. I think that's like a bit of a theorization, but I think what's not disputed is that the Palestinian leadership has made a lot of bad decisions for their own people. Sorry. דודו? כן. כן, כן. למה? טוב, כשאני בדרך והולכת לסופר פארם, אני אעשה לך טלפון שאני זה. יאללה ביי. Yeah, I'm like really deep into studying, and I've closed like some technical jobs to talk about them, and I don't do that. Mostly regarding internal actors. Yeah, I mean, I think if younger Palestinian leaders would have come to the plate and have more power, maybe by foreign backing, they could have made a big difference in the state of Palestinians today. I mean, maybe it would be like living next to Lebanon. Maybe it would be like living next to Syria, which is I'm originally from the north. We do get like bombs once in a while, but it's not as bad as having occupied territories with hostile people in them and hostile organizations, terrorist organizations that want to kill me that are so close to me. And it's different when you can put army on the border and do a tit for tat, and it's a country that separates its military from their people, and it's not a terrorist organization, or let's say a governing organization that has terrorist tendencies and aspirations, because they do govern the Gaza Strip, and they have done it sometimes successful, have given their people what they need sometimes. But of course, it's much better living next to Lebanon, which is where I grew up, like very, very close to the border up north, and going to shelter when you need to go to shelter, and that's it. And you do that every 2 or 3 years, and it's better than being at war. It's better than dying on the ground all the time and getting into combat. It's a lot better having a neighboring country that you're not friends with, let's say, you don't have any peace agreement with, you're hostile, all that. Okay, that's okay, and it's not great. And of course, it would be better if we'd had peace, but it's better than having occupied people who are just frustrated and keep on trying to take their peace back, and take their land back, and not have any official lines to make that happen. I'm personally happy not living next door with Gaza or the West Bank, but I guess here in Finland we have Russia. I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's better to live next to Russia than next to people who are being oppressed every day, and are growing up to be terrorists, also by demonizing the Israelis in their education systems, and also seeing like their parents being humiliated in crossings, and I'd rather live here in Finland, especially now that it's part of NATO. Yeah. NATO is a big win to be part of NATO. Mearsheimer, our loved one. Not surprisingly, American Jewish. Oh, we read this. We'll read it to get here. American Jewish leaders often consult with Jewish officials so the former can maximize the influence in the United States. As one activist with major Jewish organization wrote, it is routine for us to say, this is our policy on a certain issue, but we check what the Israelis think. As we as a community do it all the time. There is also a strong norm against criticizing Israeli policy, and Jewish American leaders rarely support putting pressure on Israel. Thus, Edgar Bronfman's SR, the president of the World Jewish Congress, was accused of perfidy, when he wrote a letter to President Bush in the mid-2003, urging Bush to pressure Israel to curb constructions of its controversial security fence. Gader Hafrada, yeah. Gader Hafrada, the security fence, is like, it's a block of concrete. It's not like a cute fence. It's massive. You go like next to it and you feel that something dystopic is going on. It's not cute. Critics declared that it would be obscene at any time for the president of the World Jewish Congress to lobby the president of the United States to resist policies being promoted by the government of Israel. Similarly, when Israel Policy Forum President Seymour Reich advised Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice to pressure Israel to reopen the critical border crossing in the Gaza Strip in November 2005, critics denounced his action as irresponsible behavior and declared that there is absolutely no room in the Jewish mainstream for actively canvassing against the security-related policies of Israel. Recoiling from these attacks, Reich proclaimed that the word pressure is not in my vocabulary when it comes to Israel. Jewish Americans have formed an impressive array of organizations to influence American foreign policy, of which AIPAC is the most powerful and well-known. In 1997, Fortune magazine asked members of Congress and their staffs to list the most powerful lobbies in Washington. AIPAC was ranked second behind the American Association of Retired People. But ahead of heavyweight lobbies like the AFL-CIO, the National Rifle Association, a National Journal Study, and the National Rifle Association. A National Journal study in March 2005 reached a similar conclusion, placing AIPAC in second place, tied with AARP, in the Washington's muscle ranking. The lobby also includes prominent Christian evangelicals like Gary Bauer, Jerry Falwell, Ralph Reed, and Pat Robertson, as well as Dick Armey and Tom DeLay. Wow, what a poor last name, DeLay. Former majority leaders in the House of Representatives, They believed Israel's rebirth is part of biblical prophecy, support its expansionist agenda, and think pressuring Israel is contrary to God's will. In addition, the lobby's membership include neoconservative Gentiles such as John Bolton and the late Wall Street Journal editor Robert Bartley, former Secretary of Education William Bennett, former UN Ambassador Jean Kirkpatrick, and columnist George Will. Yeah, evangelical Christians have a thing. They believe in like a Gog and Magog. It's like a war of everyone against everyone, and they think that would bring the Messiah. That's another type of messianic lunacy that affects our lives. The United States has divided the government that offered many ways to influence the policy process. As a result, interest groups can shape policy in many different ways by lobbying elected representatives and members of the executive branch, making campaign distributions, voting in elections, molding public opinion, etc. Furthermore, special interest groups enjoy disproportionate power when they are committed to a particular issue and the bulk of the population is indifferent. policymakers. Is indifferent. Sorry. Furthermore, special interest groups enjoy disproportionate power when they are committed to a particular issue, and the bulk of the population is indifferent. So they can do something when no one cares. Yeah. Policymakers will tend to accommodate those who care about the issue in question, even if their numbers are small, confident that the rest of the population will not penalize them. The Israel lobby's power flows from its unmatched ability to play the game of interest group politics. In its basic operations, it is no different from interest groups like the farm lobby, steel and textile workers, and other ethnic lobbies. What sets the Israel lobby apart is the extraordinary effectiveness, but there is nothing improper about American Jews and their Christian allies attempting to sway U.S. policies towards Israel. The lobby's activists are not sort of conspiracy depicted, in anti-Semitic tracts like the Protocol of the Elders of Zion. Ziknei Zion. For the most part, the individuals and groups that comprise the lobby are doing what other special interest groups do, just much better. Moreover, pro-Arab interest groups are weak to non-existent, which makes the lobby's task even easier. Strategies for success. The lobby pursues two broad strategies to promote U.S. support for Israel. First, it wields significant influence in Washington, pressuring both Congress and the executive branch to support Israel down the line. Whatever the individual lawmaker or policymaker's own views, the lobby tries to make of supporting Israel the smart political decision. Second, the lobby strives to ensure the public discourse about Israel is portrayed in a possible light by representing myths about Israel and its founding, and by publicizing Israel's side in the policy debates of the day. The goal is to prevent critical commentary about Israel from getting a fair hearing in the political arena. Controlling the debate is essential to guaranteeing U.S. support, because a candid discussion of U.S.-Israel relations might lead Americans to favor a different policy. Do you have any English background in your family, by the way? Yeah. My grandma is British and my grandpa's British, and I have one American grandmother. So I speak English with part of my family. So and I also have like a weird accent because it's like British and American and Hebrew, and I actually really like talking with a Hebrew accent in English. It's sometimes it's more understandable and sometimes it's less understandable, because I can like talk like this, and sometimes people that are tourists they understand me better when I talk like this, because they are regular to hear Israeli people talk like this. But I have like this weird mix of an accent. Influencing Congress. Was wondering, since your English is not in the stereotypical Israeli, like you said, it's somewhere in between the different dialects. Yeah, it's just like everything is Americanized and media and some family background. You get like a decent lingo. A key pillar of the lobby's effectiveness is its influence in the U.S. Congress, where Israel is virtually immune from criticism. This is in itself a remarkable situation, because Congress almost never shies away from contentious issues. Whether the issue is abortion, affirmative action, healthcare, or welfare, there is certain to be a lively debate on Capitol Hill. Where Israel is concerned, however, potential critics fall silent, and there is hardly any debate at all. Yeah, it's fun talking with my cousins since they have perfect American English, but then all the place names they go to full Hebrew. Yeah. I mean, and Hebrew is a cool language. I really like Hebrew, and the Hebrew accent is so rigid, but it's also funny. And when I talk in Europe, if I'm not trying to pass as non-Israeli, then also sometimes it's easier for them to hear with an English with a Israeli accent, because sometimes they think of it. It sounds a bit like more French to them because we have a chet, and it's something they prefer that. I don't know why. Yeah, it gives a lot of insight to people. I tried to learn Russian a bit in middle school from some of my friends, and the dialects really reflect like what happens inside a culture, which is very, very interesting. I think the people that get into studying languages, my grandpa knows like 8 or 9 languages, like not speaking, but like reading all of them. And you can really learn a lot by who the culture admires. Like you can say by English language and by Hebrew language that those are languages with a patriarchal history, of course. And in Russian language, you can see that elders have a lot of respect from their society. Like terms of respect are used for older people or older relatives or stuff like that. You can't really understand a culture until you speak the language. If I'm honest, it's one thing I find funny with Finkelstein, as someone who speaks neither Hebrew, Yiddish, or Arabic. I think you could get to a reasonable understanding without speaking the language, but not like Finkelstein has so many problems. I mean, I wouldn't start with learning Hebrew. In my opinion, thanks. Cool. Yeah, okay, so we were here. If language deficiency is not the problem, yeah. He should start with listening to historians he's sitting with in a debate. That would be like a good start. And not being like fucking ridiculing everyone. Thinking of people as less smart than you because they know their things from different places is laughable. There's no like reasonable explanation for that. If someone knows something and it's based in somewhere, then he knows it and it's based in somewhere. It doesn't mean his knowledge is non-existent. But if you want to bring up what he thought and discuss it and add your information to the table, that would be amazing. But that's not what he's doing. Yeah. It's terrible. And people and also historians, they change their track. It's not like an unheard thing that someone learns new information and then changes their opinion. So I think him just disregarding that, and it's like seeing Bibi at his 28-year-old interviews and seeing him now. You wouldn't suppose that it's the same person with the same ideology. When I'm finishing this joint, I'll go off stream. Okay. I think it'd be a bad sign if you held the exact same opinion for 20 years from now. Yeah, sure. I mean, you could maybe have some of the same basis, or maybe you could have the same moral beliefs, but your practical beliefs should change with time and with more knowledge. Okay. One reason for the lobby's success with Congress is that some key members are Christian Zionists, like Dick Armey, who said in September 2002 that my number one priority in foreign policy is to protect Israel. One would think that the number one priority for any congressman would be to protect America, but that is not what Armey said. Armey, whatever. There are also Jewish senators and congressmen who work to make U.S. foreign policy support Israel's interests. Pro-Israel congressional staffers are another source of the lobby's power. Yeah, Dick Armey. Yeah, it's really, are another source of the lobby's power. As Maurice Amitai, a former head of AIPAC, once admitted, there are a lot of guys at the working level up here, okay, on Capitol Hill, who happen to be Jewish, who are willing to look at certain issues in terms of their Jewishness. These are all guys who are in a position to make the decision in these areas for those senators. You can get an awful lot done just at the staff level. It is AIPAC itself, however, that forms the core of the lobby's influence in Congress. AIPAC's success is due to its ability to reward legislators and congressional candidates who support its agenda, and to punish those who challenge it. Money is critical to U.S. elections, as the recent scandals over lobbyist Jack Abramoff's various shady dealings remind us, and AIPAC makes sure that its friends get strong financial support from the myriad pro-Israel politician action committees. Those seen as hostile to Israel, on the other hand, can be sure that AIPAC will direct campaign contributions to their political opponents. AIPAC also recognizes letter-writing campaigns and encourages newspaper editors to endorse pro-Israel candidates. There is no doubt about the potency of these tactics. To take but one example, in 1948, AIPAC helped defeat Senator Charles Percy from Illinois, who, according to one prominent lobby figure, had displayed insensitivity and even hostility to our concerns. I think at the time, like at 84, sorry. Okay, never mind. Thomas Dine, the head of AIPAC at the time, explained what happened. All the Jews in America from coast to coast gathered to oust Percy and the American politicians, those who hold public positions now, and those who aspire, got the message. AIPAC prized its reputation as a formidable adversary, of course, because it discourages anyone from questioning its agenda. AIPAC's influence on Capitol Hill goes even further, however. According to Douglas Bloomfield, a former AIPAC staff member, it is common for members of Congress and their staffs to turn to AIPAC first when they need information, before calling the Library of Congress, the Congressional Research Service, committee staff, or administration experts. More importantly, he notes that AIPAC is often called upon to draft speeches, work on legislation, advise on tactics, perform research, collect co-sponsors, and marshal votes. The bottom line is that AIPAC, which is a de facto agent for the foreign government, is a stranglehold on the U.S. Congress. Open debate about U.S. policy towards Israel does not occur there, even though that policy has important consequences for the entire world. Thus, one of the three main branches of U.S. government is firmly committed to supporting Israel. As former Senator Ernest Holling, DSC, noted as he was leaving office, you can't have an Israeli policy other than what AIPAC gives you around here. Small wonder that Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon once told an American audience, when people ask me how they can help Israel, I tell them, help AIPAC. Influencing the executive. The lobby also had significant leverage over the executive branch. That power drives in part from the influence Jewish voters have on presidential elections. Despite their small numbers in the population, less than 3%, they make large campaigns, donations, and candidates from both sides. The Washington Post once admitted that Democratic presidential candidates depend on Jewish supporters to supply as much as 60% of the money. Furthermore, Jewish voters have high turnout rates and are concentrated in key states like California, Florida, Illinois, New York, and Pennsylvania. Because they matter in those elections, presidential candidates go to great lengths not to antagonize Jewish voters. And I should say like even inside of Israel, the more Orthodox people, when their rabbi tells them to go out, they don't ask questions. They go out, and they go out hard. When we were in Balfour, like protesting against Bibi, then I have it's such a cute story. I have a friend that was like arrested a few times, beat up by the police, like everything. He was there all the time in Balfour in front of Bibi's house. And one of the times that he got there early, there were two. He said they were like 10-year-olds that were Orthodox Jews, 2 little boys, and they gave him mirrors because at night the police, they shine at you with their flashlights, and if you hold a mirror to that, they're they get the light in their eyes and they can't see you, and you get in like a little moment to step back, to run, do whatever you can. And it was really cute, that little story about 2 Orthodox boys trying to help basically a lefty demonstration protest. It's not our fault that we like to live in the good states. Yeah, I guess. Although, yeah, California and New York are based. Because they matter in those in close elections, presidential candidates go to great lengths not to antagonize Jewish voters. Key organizations in the lobby also directly target the administration in power. For example, pro-Israeli forces make sure that critics of the Jewish state do not get important foreign policy appointments. Jimmy Carter wanted to make George Ball his first Secretary of State, but he knew that Ball was perceived as critical of Israel and that the lobby would oppose the appointment. This litmus test forced any aspiring policymaker to become an overt supporter of Israel, which is why public critics of Israeli policy have become an endangered species in the U.S. foreign policy establishment. Florida is basically like scenery. Yeah, that's true. I have an uncle that lives in Florida. You know, it's like it's amazing. I mean, you can see all types of weather there, and landscapes and animals. It's amazing how many animals they have compared to how not much nature they have. Everything is concrete. You can't walk anywhere. Yeah, water. Lots of lakes, lots of alligators. Cute alligators. Well, I think I'm gonna go do my homework off stream. Florida Keys. Because you can't do like this. Oh, fuck. Florida Keys.
Aqua-tinted.
I got like
Ocean
optic
brimming
fibers.
with conch and
My
coral,
internet is still
where
shit.
endless flamingos filled the skies.
It's the light, it's the smell of the water.
But the settlers also faced disastrous hurricanes and unforgiving reefs,
Yeah,
where
they have
ships
that
were
issue.
wrecked by the dozens.
The pioneers, they were a sturdy lot.
Men were even getting...
Looks amazing.
Upper and Middle Keys experienced a true tourist boom, and it wasn't just fishing that attracted people.
There are more than 2,000 shipwrecks that we know of in Florida Keys waters
Wow.
because of the way our reef is set up around these islands. Art McKee, we consider him really...
Okay. Well, I'm done with my joint, and I have to get on with my work. So it's been nice. See you next time.